Naruto. I have spirit entrustment system and I become the strongest Pokémon master. Chapter 61. The afternoon passed quickly in the blink of an eye and it was evening. Boss, we'll leave first and come back next time. Just then, Asma's team came out from the back. Seeing Shu Liang sitting on the sofa, Asma spoke. Shu Liang nodded after hearing it. Okay, come next time. I almost couldn't help shouting in my heart, this Nima is finally leaving, it's been a whole day. But just as she was about to leave, Ino looked at Sharona who was looking at the elf egg seriously not far away. Seeing that serious look, Ino immediately approached with some curiosity. Sister Sharona, what are you looking at? Is this an elf egg? It's no secret that elves are hatched from eggs, and she knows this. But why is Sharona looking at an egg so attentively? Ah, Sharona reacted. Ino, this is not an ordinary elf egg, but an egg of a phantom elf. Huh, Ino was stunned for a moment, then looked over in confusion. Phantom elf. Shikamaru, Asuma and others, after hearing this, also looked over curiously. Shu Liang, on the other hand, didn't know what to say for a moment. It seems that these people will not leave in the short term. Sharona nodded. Yes, phantom elves are a kind of elves that only exist in legends. Although some people have seen them, they are very rare. This kind of elves have unparalleled strength. Although I don't know if they can compare with those mythical beasts, they are much stronger than ordinary elves. The few people who heard this immediately became more puzzled. Mythical beast. Just now it was just a fantasy elf, but now there is another mythical beast. Sharona's eyes were also stunned for a moment, and her eyes looked at Shu Liang. She couldn't figure it out. Have people in this world never heard of the mythical beasts? Shu Liang also noticed Sharona's eyes and smiled embarrassedly. I haven't said these yet, and it's useless to know these too early. Of course he would not admit that he didn't say these because he was lazy. If Hong hadn't seen the previous evolution, he probably wouldn't have bothered to say it in advance. Sharona nodded. It was true. Now that elves are not popular in this world, it's too early to talk about mythical beasts. Ino, seeing that Sharona didn't continue to introduce, urged, Sister Sharona, tell us, what is a mythical beast? Sharona didn't answer first, but looked at Shu Liang. Shu Liang, go ahead, it's nothing. Sharona nodded and began to introduce to the curious people next to her. Legend has it that a long time ago, there was no life in this world. A creator god called Arceus created a group of elves. And that group of elves, that is, mythical beasts, are powerful and have their own divine power, respectively controlling the power of time, space, sky, water, fire, etc. After a long time, space, ground, and water sources appeared, and humans and elves were slowly born. Asuma and others who heard this were a little dumbfounded and couldn't react for a while. Why is this different from what they learned? Is this how the world was formed? Is this how humans appeared? Also, why haven't you heard of any of these mythical beasts? Even Shu Liang next to him almost couldn't help it at this moment. This is so popular. This is not the world of elves, it's the world of Naruto. You actually said that Arceus created the world now. Suddenly, I felt a little confused. These are the mythical beasts. Do you have anything else to ask? Looking at the stunned people with frozen expressions, Sharona spoke again. Then, what about the phantom elves? Ino continued to ask with a blank face. Hearing this, Sharona looked at the elf egg. Phantom beasts are as rare as mythical beasts. Maybe there is only one in the whole world. However, unlike mythical beasts, phantom beasts are not as omnipotent as mythical beasts. They usually control some unique power or have some mission. I don't know much about these. Even though she is the champion, she has very little knowledge about these, otherwise she would not choose to stay just because she knew Shu Liang had the Diancie elf egg. Hearing this, Asuma and others nodded again, their expressions were still a little unresponsive. They can accept phantom beasts, but they really can't accept mythical beasts. If it really happened with as Sharona said, any beast can destroy the world, right? Okay, I've told you everything I know. If nothing else, I'll continue my research. Sharona said, and continued to observe the elf egg carefully. Asuma and the others looked at Sharona and then looked at Shu Liang. At this time, Asuma came closer and looked at Shu Liang seriously. Boss, what did Sharona say just now? Are the beasts really that powerful? Zhu Ludai and the other two also nodded, looking at them seriously. Shu Liang shook his head. That can't be said. The beasts are also divided into levels. What Sirona said just now is the most powerful among the beasts, that is, the first level gods, and those second level and third level gods are still not that powerful. Asuma and the others were relieved when they heard the first part, but they couldn't accept it when they heard the latter part. Is there really such a powerful elf? Elves that control time and space? Shu Liang also saw what they were thinking, shook his head, and said nothing more. He didn't know how to explain it. Could it be that those beasts were not from this world? In that case, it would be even more difficult for them to accept it. Or these beasts would not appear, but that wouldn't work. What if they were summoned in the future? He simply didn't plan to explain anything more, and let them think about it themselves. At this moment, Shu Liang suddenly felt a cold breath, his eyes became solemn, and he looked outside the wooden house. Whoosh! At this moment, Gardevoir appeared in front of Shu Liang, looking at him with worry. Xiaoliang, there is a bad breath approaching. Shu Liang touched Gardevoir's head. I know, don't worry. Swish! At this time, Dragonite also flew over, frowning and looking at Shu Liang. Shu Liang nodded, didn't say much, and continued to look outside. At this time, seeing the appearance of the two elves, Asuma and others reacted, their eyes became surprised again, and then they became curious. What surprised them was the speed of Gardevoir, which appeared here in the blink of an eye, and they couldn't react at all. And what they were curious about was why it suddenly became like this. Wasn't it fine just now? How come it became like this in the blink of an eye? Just then, a sound of footsteps came. Everyone who heard the sound, except for Sirona who was still looking at the Pokémon egg, looked towards the door. Looking towards the door, I saw Danzo and several of his men walking in with a cold face. Seeing this, Shu Liang's eyes became a little solemn. Danzo, even Asuma next to him looked a little surprised at this time. Danzo heard Asuma's voice and his eyes flashed with a trace of doubt, and then looked at Shu Liang next to him and Dragonite Gardevoir behind him. This must be the boss here. Sorry to bother you by coming here uninvited. Shu Liang smiled. How can the arrival of the root leader be considered as a bother? But I don't know what the purpose of this visit is. Danzo, boss, I heard that the elves here are very powerful. I wonder if we can all get one for each of our roots. Hearing this, before Shu Liang spoke, Asuma's eyes next to him became a little shocked. Even if he only got one elf, he only trained his elf for one day. But he also had some understanding of the power of elves. But Danzo now wants to equip all his roots with elves. Shu Liang, not noticing Asuma's expression, looked at Danzo with a smile on his face. Of course, as long as you people from the root can capture the elves, I will thank you for taking care of my business. Oh, Danzo had a blank expression. Can't you just give us the elves? Shu Liang shook his head. That won't work, there are still rules. He was full of disdain for Danzo in his heart. Who the hell are you? You actually want to get it directly. Danzo's eyes became a little cold. Then I don't know if the boss can give me a face. As soon as these words came out, the scene changed instantly. The scene that originally looked very harmonious suddenly felt like a battle. Asuma, Ino Shikacho and the other two also became a little worried. Looking at Shu Liang's suddenly cold expression and Danzo's cold eyes, they might fight later. On Shu Liang's side, his expression changed, and the slight smile disappeared. He looked straight at Danzo. You have no face in front of me. I treat you well, and you think you are a big shot. You still give face, who do you think you are? How dare you? Before Danzo on the opposite side spoke, several rude ninjas following behind stood up and looked at Shu Liang angrily. On Shu Liang's side, Dragonite and Gardevoir saw this and came to the front, staring at Danzo and others on the opposite side. Asuma and others who were watching on the side, all looked a little anxious. It's not that they are afraid that Shu Liang will get into trouble, but they are afraid that Danzo on the opposite side will get into trouble. If Danzo gets into trouble here, Konoha may confront Shu Liang, which is not what they want to see. Although Danzo doesn't seem to be very important, in the hearts of most ninjas, he is a dispensable person. But for Asuma, who knows the interests best, if they meet, it will really be like this. Danzo didn't speak after hearing Shu Liang's words, but continued to watch closely. Shu Liang, of course, was not in vain, and looked over without moving his eyes. Hee. The two looked at each other for a while, and Danzo laughed coldly twice. It seems that the boss is very confident, but it doesn't matter, I was just joking. As soon as these words came out, the eyes of the people watching around became surprised. The ninjas of the route next to him, Asuma, and even Shu Liang, became a little surprised. In my impression, Danzo is not so easy to talk to. Except for the Hokage, everyone wants to fight. That's completely without fear, but now, Shu Liang is so disrespectful, and he can still hold back. Especially the people of the route next to him, their eyes are almost dumbfounded. Even when facing the Hokage, Danzo would not be like this. He should have expressed his anger, but there was no need to suppress him now. Hee. Shu Liang also laughed coldly. Don't make such jokes next time. He said this, but his head started to hurt. If Danzo chose to take action directly, he would not have to worry about anything, he could just kill him with one blow. But he did not take action directly at this time, so he would definitely play dirty later. For him, it would be better to just take action directly. After all, Danzo's cold eyes just now were not fake. With his unwillingness to stop until he achieves his goal, if he didn't do something, he wouldn't be Danzo. Asuma and the others were relieved when they saw this scene. They didn't know what the two were thinking, but they just felt that it was good that they didn't fight. By the way, boss. At this time, Danzo continued to say, I wonder if I can capture a Pokémon. Shu Liang nodded. Of course, who doesn't welcome guests? Although there is a possibility of a confrontation in the future, it doesn't prevent him from letting Danzo capture the Pokémon. The Pokémon and he were both very touched. Even if they were trained by Danzo later, they would definitely not attack him. Although they didn't help Shu Liang fight Danzo, it was enough not to do it. The most important thing is that the treasure chest cannot be given up. Danzo didn't say much when he heard this. He took out the money and handed it to Shu Liang. Boss, give us a few Pokeballs, Pokemon encyclopedias and ability cubes. Shu Liang smiled, took the money, and handed over the things he needed. Danzo obviously knows this place well and has observed it a lot. If the people who came here to capture the elves in the past 2 days were not sent by Danzo, he would never believe it. After that, he didn't say anything more, watching Danzo and others walk to the back. At this time, Shu Liang gave Dragonite a look, and Dragonite nodded and walked towards the back mountain. As the backs of Danzo and others disappeared completely, Ino breathed a sigh of relief and patted his chest. I was really scared just now, boss, I thought you were going to fight. Shu Liang smiled and shook his head. How could it be, didn't he say it was a joke? Ino nodded. Yes, it was a joke, but this kind of joke is really scary. Asuma looked at Shu Liang with a serious expression at this time. Boss, you have to be careful, I think this matter may not be so simple. Knowing Danzo, he really didn't think this matter would just pass. Shikamaru's eyes became puzzled. Asuma-sensei, why do you say that? He didn't know the details of Danzo yet, and he was very puzzled. Isn't it all right? Why can't it be so simple? Asuma shook his head and continued to look at Shu Liang. Boss, be careful. If there is really anything, you can go to the Hokage. I believe he will help you. After that, he left here with a puzzled face. Shu Liang shook his head speechlessly. Do you think so little of yourself? Do you really think you are afraid of Danzo? Can't deal with him? If you are really unhappy, you can just kill him directly, and then go to another place to entrust the spirits. But that would be a pity, after all, Konoha has the most plot characters. Just then, Sharona suddenly screamed. It moved, Shu Liang, the elf egg moved. Hearing the noise, Shu Liang frowned and looked over. Seeing Sharona's face full of surprise, the corners of his mouth couldn't help twitching. You have been looking at the elf egg just now. Sharona was stunned for a moment and nodded. Yes, what's wrong? Shu Liang, didn't you find anything wrong? Sharona was a little confused and looked around. What's strange, did Ino and the others leave? Shu Liang didn't know what to say. This Nima Danzo came over, making such a big noise, and they almost fought directly, and you actually said this now. I was a little confused in my heart. Is this elf egg so beautiful? I can't feel the surrounding situation when I look at it. After coughing twice, Shu Liang nodded. Yes, let's go. What else can he say? Once Sharona said this, he couldn't say anything. Sharona didn't think much about it, and her eyes became excited again and said, Shu Liang, the Diancie elf egg just moved. Moved? Shu Liang looked puzzled and walked closer. When he saw Sharona's expression just now, he forgot what she said before. Sharona nodded. Yes, it moved a little. Hearing this, Shu Liang looked at the elf egg, and after seeing no movement, he looked puzzled. Are you sure it really moved? I'm sure, it really moved a little. Shu Liang nodded. Okay, even if it really moved a little, then what? Sharona's expression froze. What then? Shu Liang's eyelids couldn't help but tremble. I mean, it moved, what happened next? Is it about to hatch? Sharona shook her head. No, it looks like it's not time to hatch yet. Then what are you talking about? Shu Liang stood up, looked at Sharona speechlessly, and admired her in his heart. This movement doesn't mean anything, what are you excited about? I thought it was going to hatch. Huh, Sharona looked at Shu Liang with a question mark on her face, and her eyes didn't react for a while. Shu Liang spat out and continued, no, the elf egg just moved. Why are you so excited? Sharona, when the elf egg moves, it means that the elf inside is healthy. It may also be a reaction to emotions such as happiness or joy. Shu Liang didn't know what to say for a moment. What's so important about these things? I really don't understand what's so surprising. But then, Shu Liang's eyes lit up, and he said to Sharona, then tell me, could it be that the Diancie inside was nervous, shy, or scared because of you looking at her, so she moved a little? Sharona frowned, fell into deep thought, and then nodded, that's also possible. It's not just possible, it's very likely. You've been watching for the whole afternoon, and you didn't even blink, right? Other security guards probably don't stand as well as you do. Sharona suddenly became a little nervous. What should I do? Will Diancie hate me after she hatches? That's not easy for me to study. Shu Liang also had a headache, covering his forehead. Okay, don't look at it for now. If you keep looking at it like this, even if it's me, I will hate you. Keep staring, like a weird uncle. Who is this? No one can stand it, right? Although this is not an ugly uncle, but a beautiful young lady. Well, let's not look at it for now. Sharona was indeed a little scared. She left here and walked towards the sofa where Shu Liang was sitting, and then sat down directly. This scene made Shu Liang next to him dumbfounded. Is he so self-conscious? Why are you looking at me? I helped you train the elves this morning. Can't you even sit for a while? Otherwise, I will get up and stop training the elves for you in the future. Hearing this, Shu Liang smiled. Ha ha ha, it's okay, you sit, I can sit on the chair next to you. There were stormy waves in his heart. Why did he feel different when he didn't look at the elf eggs? Is this a dual personality? He changed as soon as he said it. He sighed and didn't say anything more. He sat down on the wooden chair next to him. At the same time, the back mountain of the elf house. Danzo and others were walking in the back mountain. At this time, a root ninja next to him looked at Danzo and said, Master Danzo, should we? As he spoke, he made a gesture of wiping his neck with his hand. Danzo shook his head. Shaking his head, no, it's not time yet, wait. He originally planned to take action this time, after all, he had brought his men with him. He brought his most powerful men with him. In his mind, no matter how powerful Dragonite was, he was sure to take it down this time. But after coming here, the moment he saw Dragonite, he was not so confident. That momentum, even if he brought the most powerful ninjas of the route, he was still unsure. If it was just like this, he would not let it go. After all, he had a trump card, and he had enough time to hold Dragonite back. But when he saw Gardevoir again, he suddenly lost the courage to take action. He even wanted to curse in his heart, because there was obviously another powerful Pokémon, but he had no news at all. In his perception, Gardevoir was almost at the level of Shadow. Even if he and Gardevoir fought alone, he had no confidence to solve it without using the trump card. Even if they use their trump cards, it will probably be a miserable victory. With Dragonite, how can they fight? The root ninja nodded, said nothing more, and silently retreated a little. But at this moment, Danzo turned his head and said, will Orochimaru come over after a while? The root ninja nodded, yes. Yeah, Danzo also nodded. After returning, contact Orochimaru and tell him about the situation here. He knows what to do. The root ninja nodded again, okay, Danzo. Danzo didn't say anything more when he heard this, and began to look around. But he secretly thought in his heart, with Orochimaru and his men, I will take down Konoha and these elves this time. Thinking of this, his eyes emitted a cold light, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The few people who followed him couldn't help but tremble in their hearts when they saw Danzo's expression at this time. They were very familiar with this kind of expression. Every time after this kind of expression, something big would happen. I just don't know how big this time will be. After that, the few people didn't say anything more and began to look for the elf seriously. Shu Liang, it's getting dark, where's my ice cream? Watching the sun setting lower and lower outside, Sharona frowned and looked at Shu Liang. Shu Liang smiled bitterly. Sister, we still have customers in the store. We will go after the customers leave. Can you stop nagging? I don't know how many times Sharona has said this. Why hasn't this customer come out yet? It's a waste of time. Ahem. Just as Sharona was complaining, a cough came from the back door, and then Danzo walked in with a cold face. Shu Liang, these are the customers, right? When Sharona saw this, she looked at Shu Liang with an embarrassed look. She felt very embarrassed. She was saying bad things and was heard by others. Shu Liang nodded, without saying anything, and looked at Danzo and the others. Danzo looked at Sharona coldly, and then looked at Shu Liang. Boss, if you don't know how to train your subordinates, I can teach you. Sharona's eyes became angry when she heard this, even she was very angry at this time. Shu Liang's expression was similar at this time, but not as obvious as Sharona's. He just said coldly, why, do you want to train them into slaves like you? To become a tool without thoughts? Danzo's face suddenly became ugly, and then he sneered, isn't this good? Shouldn't subordinates be like this? Hee. Shu Liang shook his head. I can't do this. Only people with brain problems will do this. You see, if a person has no thoughts of his own, he is just a machine without emotions. In this way, he needs to think about everything by himself. Do you think such a person is mentally ill? Danzo and others heard this, and their faces became very ugly. In their eyes, the anger almost turned into substance. But then, Danzo suppressed it and changed the subject with a cold face. Boss, nothing, we'll leave first. Shu Liang nodded with a smile and made a gesture of invitation towards the door. Danzo and his friends saw this gesture, but they didn't say much. They looked at Shu Liang again and walked out. Entrust a plot character elf, reward points 1000, bronze exclusive treasure chest 1. As the few people left, 3 voices sounded in Shu Liang's mind. Hearing this voice, Shu Liang's face became confused. In this crowd, is there anyone else who appeared in the plot besides Danzo? Shu Liang, won't you offend him by doing this? After Danzo and his friends left, Sharona looked at Shu Liang with some self-blame in her eyes. Of course, she knew that Shu Liang just said this to help her. It was because of this that she felt a little guilty at the moment. Shu Liang didn't think much after hearing this. He looked at Sharona. After seeing the self-blaming expression, he curled his lips and said, don't be sentimental. I just don't like him, not to help you. Sharona was stunned and looked a little bit unbelievable. But after seeing Shu Liang's smiling face, she was furious, is it fun? Now the customers are gone, go buy ice cream. Shu Liang couldn't help twitching his mouth. This guy must have multiple personalities, otherwise how could he change his face so quickly? But before Shu Liang could answer, Sharona said again, but Shu Liang, is it really okay to do that just now? Shu Liang shook his head, what's the problem? Am I afraid of him? After all, you are my person now. If you scold you in front of me, isn't that a slap in my face? Bah, who is your person? Sharona was a little ashamed and angry, and rolled her eyes at Shu Liang. Why are you blushing? I'm doing this for myself. If others knew that my people were wronged by me, how would they look at me? Hearing this, Sharona's face became normal again, and she looked at Shu Liang and wanted to beat him to death. I was finally moved, but now I ruined it. I was wondering if I was not beautiful anymore. But thinking about it this way, it was not right. She was still confident in her appearance. There was only one reason, Shu Liang might like men. Thinking of this, the look in her eyes when she looked at Shu Liang was not right. It was a good thing that Shu Liang didn't know Sharona's thoughts, otherwise he would have to try with her to see if he was a real man. Swish. At this moment, Dragonite also returned to the wooden house, looking at Shu Liang. After Shu Liang saw it, his face became serious. Dragonite, how is it? What are the Pokémons they captured? Ah, Unicorn, Spearow and Abigar. Only these 3. Dragonite nodded, and said nothing more. After Shu Liang saw it, his face became strange. There were 3 rewards, and they only captured 3 Pokémons. If they are not plot characters, the system will not give rewards for capturing Pokémons. The boss Feng who sold beast meat before was like this, and the strange ninjas behind were also like this. Only after the Pokémon level was upgraded, he would get points. I couldn't help but complain in my heart, this is not good. 7 people came, but only 3 of them got Pokémons. It's a pity that they bought so many things before. It's too rubbish. Of course, Shu Liang didn't expect that the aura of Danzo and others was very cold, and Pokémons didn't like this aura, so basically no Pokémon was willing to be their partners. And these captured elves have bad personalities and are prone to irritability. If there were not only these few elves with bad personalities in the back mountain, I am afraid that Danzo and his men would not be able to capture any of them. Shaking his head, Shu Liang did not think about it anymore and continued to look at Dragonite. They didn't force the elves, did they? Sure, Dragonite nodded and patted his chest at the same time. Okay, I know you are very powerful, but Dragonite, do you remember the breath of those elves? Sure, Dragonite nodded again, and his eyes became serious. Seeing this, Shu Liang also nodded and turned to look at Gardevoir. You remember it too, right? You two should sense those elves well. If there is any danger, go over. He was afraid that Danzo would dissect the elves. After all, Danzo did this a lot. As the only necrophiliac in Konoha, he liked this activity very much. So before, he asked Dragonite and Gardevoir to remember the breath of the 3 elves that were taken away, so that they could sense if they were injured. In this way, it would be easier to rescue them in time. After all, they were elves that left from him, so no matter what, they had to be protected at least. If there was danger in the battle, it was fine and acceptable. But if it was because of the master, it would be unacceptable. When the 2 elves heard what Shu Liang said, they nodded seriously. Hang on, don't worry, Xiaoliang, I'll pay attention. A few days later, in the morning, in the elf house, Shu Liang sat on the sofa, looking at Sharona who was hiding and observing the elf eggs not far away, and said speechlessly, no, I can't figure it out. What's so good about this elf egg? Why are you hiding and watching it? Since the elf egg moved last time, Sharona was frightened by Shu Liang's words. After that, she stopped for 2 days and didn't dare to continue staring at the elf egg. But after 2 days, Sharona started again. This time she didn't stare at it closely, but secretly hid and watched. Sharona on the other side shook her head when she heard Shu Liang's words, you don't understand. As a relic archaeologist, we have to observe these elf eggs carefully at all times. Shu Liang shook his head and continued to say, but did you forget something today? Why didn't you train the elves? In the past, although Sharona also secretly observed the elf eggs, she observed them in the afternoon. In the morning, she was still training the elves in the back. Sharona looked at Shu Liang and said, Solimon has been trained for a while. Just follow my training method. It doesn't matter if I go or not. I don't have much to train Gardevoir. Just follow your own method. What about Dragonite? Shu Liang asked with a puzzled look on his face. He had no doubts about Solimon. He had seen Sharona training it several times. The same is true for Gardevoir. It does have its own training method. It only needs Sharona to give it some pointers. But he has never seen Sharona train Dragonite. Sharona rolled her eyes and said, Shu Liang, although I am indeed a champion, I am not as good as you think. Dragonite is already at the peak of champion. If it is further improved, it can enter the master. How can I train it? I didn't know what to say in my heart. I was not that amazing. If he could train Dragonite well, she would not be a simple champion. Shu Liang was stunned for a moment when he heard what Sharona said, and then he looked over with some doubt. In your world, Dragonite is already a champion-level elf. Sharona nodded, and her eyes became puzzled. Yes, don't you know? Shu Liang couldn't help but twitch his mouth twice. If he knew, he would never have asked such a question just now. This means that the super shadow in the Naruto world is similar to the master in the elf world. Touching his chin, Shu Liang did not answer Sharona's words, frowning and falling into deep thought. He always thought that the elf level 100 was the champion, and it was above level 100 that it was a master. Shu Liang, what's wrong? Sharona saw Shu Liang's expression and showed curiosity on her face. Well, Sharona, the 3rd level god in your world is more than 100 levels, what about the 2nd level god? Sharona looked at Shu Liang again in confusion, a little confused, why Shu Liang didn't know these things that many people knew. But after a moment of confusion, he began to explain. Level 3 gods are 100 to 105, while level 2 gods are 105 to 110. After level 110, there are the legendary level 1 gods, that is, those divine beasts with divine power, but these are all speculations. No one can be sure of the real level 1 gods. Shu Liang listened and nodded, and his frowning brows relaxed. Looking at it this way, there is indeed no problem. In this Naruto, the 6 paths are also strong and weak, and the difference between them is very huge. This is probably the gap between the level 3 gods and level 2 gods among the elves. And the level 1 god should be the level of Kagaya Otsutsuki in the Naruto world, as well as those Otsutsuki people in outer space. Boss Shu, I'm here. This time I'm here to introduce you to business. Just then, a voice suddenly came from outside the door. Shu Liang and Sharona didn't think much about it and looked towards the door. Looking over, I saw Boss Feng, who had obtained an elf here before, walking in with a flattering smile on his face. Seeing this, Shu Liang also smiled. Boss Feng, you look rosy, you must have earned a lot during this period. Shu Liang was still very welcome to this ordinary person who had conquered an elf from him. But it was a pity that Boss Feng had not come here in the past few days, and he had not seen ordinary people coming to conquer elves, which made him feel a little bit sorry. I was wondering if this guy was secretly cultivating elves and didn't want others to know. Boss Shu is too flattering me, calling me you can call me Lao Feng, or call me by my name, Feng Tang. Quote. Lao Feng touched the back of his head and said to Shu Liang with a smile on his face. Shu Liang didn't know what to say. He was speechless about the name. Lao Feng saw Shu Liang's expression and said again, how is it? My name is okay, right? Shu Liang was stunned again, and looked at Lao Feng, who was a little embarrassed for a while, and nodded, yes, it is okay. Then he quickly changed the topic. Lao Feng, you just said to introduce the guests, where are the guests? Boss Shu, wait a minute, I'll call my son in now. After that, Lao Feng walked out the door. Shu Liang heard this and shook his head silently, thinking to himself, it seems that it is indeed similar to what I thought. I'm afraid that Lao Feng didn't spread the elves things, but just cultivated them secretly. Quote. Thinking of this, he had a headache. After all, if Lao Feng refused to promote, he had no choice. Could he force him to promote the elves with a knife? He shook his head again. Forget it, I don't want to think about it anymore. I'll ask later, maybe there are other reasons. Come in quickly, stop hesitating. I don't think your father is a coward. Why are you so timid? Lao Feng walked in cursing. Shu Liang didn't think much about it and looked behind Lao Feng. When he saw it, the corners of his mouth twitched quickly. Behind Lao Feng, there was a big man who was more than 2 meters tall and full of muscles. What made people speechless was that the big man looked tall, but the expression on his face was shy and afraid. He carefully hid behind Lao Feng. Boss Shu, this is my son. His name is Feng Tian. You can just call him Xiao Feng. Quote. After saying that, old Feng raised his leg and gave Feng Tian next to him a slap. Why are you standing there? Call someone, call Uncle Shu. Feng Tian also looked at Shu Liang timidly. Shu. Uncle Shu. Puff. Before Shu Liang could say anything, Sharona next to him couldn't help laughing. When several people heard this, they also looked at Sharona. Well, sorry, you guys talk about your own things. Looking at the looks of several people, Sharona blushed. Shu Liang rolled his eyes at Sharona, and then looked at Lao Feng with a somewhat speechless look. No need to call me uncle, I'm still young, and I don't want to be an uncle so early. How can this be? Lao Feng waved his hand. Boss Shu, we are peers, my son must call you uncle. Shu Liang grinned, looking at Lao Feng with a bit of resentment. No need. Your son is so old, just from the appearance, it won't be strange to call him uncle. Shaking his head, Shu Liang didn't want to say more about this matter, interrupted Lao Feng who wanted to continue talking, and looked at the two with a bit of strange eyes. This is a bit confusing. Lao Feng's height looks like more than 1.6 meters, but why is his son more than 2 meters? This is not right, I want to ask Lao Feng directly. Boss Shu, this is my son, you don't have to guess. Lao Feng also noticed Shu Liang's eyes and rolled his eyes. Ahem, Shu Liang felt a little embarrassed. Well, old Feng, you want to take your son to capture the elves, right? You know the rules, just take him in directly. Now that his thoughts were seen, it would only make things more awkward if he continued to talk like this, so he should just send him away quickly. It would be better to ask the questions in his mind when the two of them came out. It was so awkward now that it was not easy to ask anything. After hearing what Shu Liang said, old Feng quickly took out the money, took the elf ball, and excitedly pulled Feng Tian to run to the back. Uncle Shu. Seeing the two leave, Sharona looked at Shu Liang and called him sweetly. Shu Liang wanted to hit him immediately, and frowned. What are you calling? Go look at your elf eggs. Tisk, boring. Sharona pouted, and didn't say anything more, her eyes were on the elf eggs again. At the same time, in the Kingdom of Soup. On a bridge under construction, Kakashi sat beside him, watching Dazuna and the others building the bridge enthusiastically. Teacher Kakashi, I succeeded, I can climb trees, ha ha ha. Just then, Naruto's voice came from the side. Kakashi heard the voice and looked over, only to see Naruto standing horizontally on the tree trunk, laughing and looking at him happily. Idiot, you are the last to succeed, what's there to be happy about? On the water next to him, Sasuke, who was standing steadily, couldn't help but rolled his eyes and complained. Naruto suddenly became angry. Arrogant Sasuke, what did you say? Come down, I want to fight you one-on-one. Not far from the tree, Sakura, who was staying with a few elves, couldn't help covering her face when she saw this scene. In the past few days, under Kakashi's special training, this situation can be said to be seen every day. I really don't know what to say, these two people seem to be born incompatible. Sasuke likes to attack Naruto, and Naruto likes to challenge Sasuke one-on-one. It was as if they had developed a tacit understanding. Gah! At this moment, Sakura suddenly saw a light emanating from the Bulbasaur next to her. Seeing this, she shouted anxiously, Naruto, Naruto, look at your Bulbasaur, it's glowing. As soon as these words came out, Naruto, who was originally furious, suddenly calmed down and looked at Bulbasaur. Seeing the Bulbasaur covered by the light, his face became worried, jumped down the tree, and shouted while approaching its mouth, Bulbasaur, Bulbasaur, what's wrong with you? Kakashi and Sasuke's eyes became solemn when they saw this, stopped their actions, and quickly approached. When Naruto came to Sakura's side, he became more and more worried the more he looked, gritted his teeth and prepared to pounce on it. But just as he started to move, Kakashi next to him pulled him back and said, let's take a look first. Teacher Kakashi, Bulbasaur is lit up. Kakashi's mouth twitched, and then he nodded. I know, but it doesn't look bad now, let's take a look first. No. Sasuke next to him showed his Sharingan and frowned, saying, in the light, Bulbasaur seems to have undergone some changes. Is it? Sakura looked over in confusion. No. The light completely obscured the situation inside, and nothing could be seen clearly. Kakashi's eyes also became confused, and he touched his chin. Could this be the evolution that the boss said? In the past few days, Bulbasaur has been training, but there is no sign of a breakthrough. I even think that the boss is lying. But just now, just when Sasuke's voice came to mind, he immediately thought of this. Evolution. The three little ones looked surprised, and they carefully observed Bulbasaur. At this moment, the light on Bulbasaur became stronger and weaker. The change in shape became clearly visible. That's right, this should be the evolution that the boss said. Kakashi's eyes were a little excited, and his eyes became more serious. Naruto rubbed his hands after hearing this. Is it finally going to evolve? Because Bulbasaur has not changed much in the past few days, he has no appetite for food. After all, Bulbasaur has already reached level 15 before leaving Konoha. But the training has not stopped in the past few days, but the level of Bulbasaur has not changed at all. How can I not worry about this? Before, it could be upgraded by one level every day, but now it has not been upgraded by one level for several days. Sakura and Sasuke also watched carefully. Sakura was purely curious about what evolution is like. And Sasuke was puzzled as if thinking about something. His Charmander had the same situation as Bulbasaur. When it was upgraded to level 15, there was no movement. He was a little worried that something was wrong with Charmander. After all, Sakura and Kakashi's Pokémon didn't have this situation. Sakura's Lucky Egg had already reached level 17. And Kakashi's Pikachu was even more exaggerated, with level 18. But now after seeing this scene, he felt a little relieved. Judging from the current situation, the Pokémon should be evolving, so it will be a little more difficult to break through. Of course, this is also his guess at this time. It is not certain whether it is true or not, otherwise he would not show a puzzled expression. Just when these people had their own thoughts in their hearts, the light on Bulbasaur slowly dissipated. As the light dissipated, a Pokémon that looked like Bulbasaur but was not Bulbasaur appeared on the ground. The Pokémon looked around, and when he saw Naruto, his face became a little excited. "Nah." Naruto was a little stunned, and said with some stammering, Are you the Pokémon evolved from Bulbasaur? Although it does look a bit like Bulbasaur, the changes are a bit big. It's not just a simple increase in size. The color of the body has changed, can it fade? And there are flowers on the back, are you serious? Flowers. Bang. Before Bulbasaur spoke, Sakura next to him couldn't help but rolled her eyes and punched Naruto. "You idiot, we saw it with our own eyes, what else could it be if not Bulbasaur?" Bulbasaur nodded, and couldn't help rolling her eyes at Naruto. "I was really convinced in my heart, such a simple thing, why are you asking?" Ahem. At this time, Kakashi coughed. "Okay, stop making trouble, let's take a look at the evolved Bulbasaur first." As he said, he took out the Pokémon illustrated book from his waist bag and scanned Bulbasaur. Bulbasaur. Gender. Male. Classification. Seed Pokémon. Attribute. Grass Poison. Feature. Lush. The less HP, the stronger the grass attribute attack, up to doubled. Level. 19. Genin. Skills. Impact, Call, Parasitic Seed, Vine Whip, Poison Powder. Looking at the information in the Pokémon Encyclopedia, Kakashi frowned. The level has reached 19, and it just increased by 4 levels at once. Ha ha ha. Naruto couldn't help laughing again. Not bad, it's worthy of being my Pokémon. Not only has it evolved, but it has also been upgraded to level 19. Nah. Bulbasaur smiled when he heard this, nodded proudly, and looked at Charmander next to him. In the past few days, Naruto and Sasuke had to fight from time to time, which led to the two Pokémon fighting many times. Now that he has evolved, of course he has to let Charmander see it. "I couldn't beat you before, but now that I've evolved, you can't beat me." The people next to him also noticed Bulbasaur's look, and Kakashi and Sakura were speechless. It's true that the master is like the spirit. Naruto and Sasuke like to make trouble, and the evolved Bulbasaur and Charmander are the same. Ha ha ha, Sasuke, you will definitely not be my opponent now. Bulbasaur is now level 19, and I don't know when your Charmander will break through to level 19. When Naruto thought about defeating Sasuke, he couldn't help laughing. Idiot. Sasuke, on his side, heard what Naruto said and rolled his eyes. Bulbasaur is now level 19, which should be accumulated from the training during this period. If my Charmander evolves, it will also break through several levels at once like him. If there may have been some doubts before, now it is basically certain that it is absolutely what he said. Nah. Charmander looked at Bulbasaur next to him after hearing what Sasuke said. Bulbasaur was immediately a little angry and wanted to have a duel with Charmander right now. Okay, let's do this for now, be quiet. Looking at the two elves who were about to fight, Kakashi looked at Naruto and Sasuke speechlessly. This bridge should be completed this afternoon, don't practice for now, have a good rest, there may be enemies in the afternoon. Enemy. Naruto looked around. Where did the enemy come from? Bang. Stupid Naruto. Uncle Dazuna said that the so-called Kato would not let this island be built, so he will definitely find someone to destroy it. Kakashi nodded. Yes, that's what Sakura said, so be prepared. Naruto nodded. So here, don't worry, Teacher Kakashi, I will definitely not let them destroy the bridge. Then the few people didn't say anything more, and began to sit down and rest. Naruto and Sasuke didn't practice chakra control anymore. But Kakashi looked at the woods next to him with a puzzled look. At the same time, in the woods not far away, Zabuza and Haku stood on a big tree, looking at the direction of Kakashi and his companions with surprise and solemnity. Master Zabuza, are we still going to act? At this time, Haku looked at Bulbasaur and asked Zabuza with some hesitation. I was shocked. I didn't expect that this summoned beast could evolve. It was amazing that the summoned beast could use ninjutsu, even in the ninja world. There aren't many of these, but now they can evolve. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have thought they were dreaming. Even if they saw it with their own eyes, they couldn't believe it in their hearts. Give up this mission, Zabuza said with a serious look. Although it's not good for a ninja to give up the mission, this mission is indeed not something we can complete. After all, we can't just go and die stupidly, right? Even if it's just one Kakashi, he doesn't have the confidence to solve it, not to mention there are 3 genin and 4 summoned beasts who don't know the situation. Bai next to him nodded. Then Lord Zabuza, let's leave here. Zabuza shook his head. No, follow them first. The boss they just mentioned, this summoned beast should not be from Konoha. If Konoha really has one, there is no way there would be no news before. Let's follow them. If possible, let's try it and see if we can get it. Having fought with these summoned beasts, he knew very well how much help these summoned beasts can bring to ninjas. Moreover, the speed of improvement was indeed unbelievable to him. Especially the evolution just now, his physical fitness was greatly improved. Bai beside him nodded again, and didn't say anything more. But at this time, Zabuza spoke again. Bai, return all the money to Kato, and say that we don't accept this mission. Since the mission cannot be completed, it is better to return the money. Although he is a rebel ninja, he still has the principles. Bai nodded, and then without staying for long, he jumped up and left in one direction. A magical summoning beast, if I had it before, I'm afraid I wouldn't be a rebel now. Shaking his head, Zabuza sighed to himself, with a hint of loneliness in his eyes. Then he shook his head and recovered, looking at the spirits of Bulbasaur with fiery eyes. But it's not too late now, as long as we know where these summoning beasts come from, we can't let Konoha dominate alone. Teacher Kakashi, I'm so bored. Why haven't the enemies come yet? After a while, Naruto sat on the edge of the bridge and said with a bored look on his face. Naruto, be quiet. Sakura, who was next to him, glared at Naruto when she heard what he said. In this situation, this guy still felt bored. She was almost anxious to death. That's right. Kakashi nodded and looked at Naruto. Be quiet, it's still early, wait a little longer. Zabuza, I didn't expect him to be so unreliable. In the end, I have to do it myself. Just then, a voice suddenly came from behind the bridge. Hearing this voice, Kakashi and others looked over with serious eyes. Behind everyone, a fat man with an angry face walked over. Behind him, there were a dozen ronin holding samurai swords, looking at them with murderous eyes. Seeing these people coming, the people who were building the bridge nearby showed fear in their eyes and couldn't help shaking. Kato is here, it's over, we're going to die. Can't it be completed in the end? Still not possible. Kato, why is it like this? Dasna in the crowd heard these voices and looked at the trembling body of fear, and his eyes became firm. Don't be afraid, everyone, the bridge is almost finished, at worst we will fight. When everyone heard this, their eyes became firm, controlled their trembling voices, and nodded. That's right, at worst we will fight, there's nothing to be afraid of. That's right, anyway, we're going to die, let's fight. After all, when they came here, they didn't think they would survive. After all, Kato would never let them go. Since they were all going to die, why not give it a try? Kakashi, who was standing in front of everyone, became curious. He looked at Kato and thought to himself, is this Kato, the richest man in the land of waves? I had always heard of Kato before, but this was the first time I had actually seen him. Thinking about it, his eyes became confused. Did Zabuza give up the mission? It seems that I didn't perceive it wrongly at that time. He had long suspected this in his heart. After all, Bai's actions were too abnormal at that time. And the timing of his appearance was too coincidental. It's these ninjas who gave you courage. I really don't know what these ninjas are for. They actually made you dare to come and build a bridge. Kato didn't know what Kakashi was thinking. Hearing the voices of the construction workers on the opposite side, he spoke with cold eyes. Kakashi and others beside him were full of anger when they heard this. Their disdain for ninjas was almost solidified. However, Kakashi and others didn't say anything at this time. Even Naruto, who had always been very straightforward, didn't refute at this time. Instead, they all looked at him viciously. Kakashi even looked at him like he was looking at a dead man. Kato still ignored Kakashi and the others and continued to say, do you know why I didn't come to you the first time? As he spoke, Kato showed an evil smile at the corner of his mouth. I just want you to see how desperate you will be when you see this bridge that is about to be built being destroyed in front of you, ha ha ha. After saying that, Kato couldn't help laughing. Kato, We are not afraid. Even if we die, we will not let you destroy the bridge. Dasna stood up with gritted teeth and shouted with anger in his eyes. The workers who followed him stood up one by one after hearing this. That's right, Cardo, we won't let you destroy it even if we die. That's right, you bandit, we won't let you succeed. Cardo also heard these words and couldn't help laughing again. Ha ha ha, funny, funny, what can you use to stop it? Rely on these useless ninjas. As he said that, the smile on his face disappeared, and the cold eyes of the Stool Dasna people said, if that's the case, then I will never let you go. You are not afraid of death, but your family will be afraid, right? I will let you watch your family members being killed and dismembered one by one in front of you. Just after Cardo finished speaking, Naruto couldn't help it anymore, waving his fist and approaching quickly, and punched the fat face hard. With a bang, the fat body flew backwards, and the whole person slid several meters on the ground, with blood flowing on his face and several teeth falling out. Naruto continued to look at Cardo angrily. You fool, Uncle Dasna and the others just want to live a good life, what's wrong with them? The anger in my heart has never been so strong since I was a child. I can't believe it. Why can there be such people in this world? Puff. Kato stood up unsteadily, spit out a mouthful of blood, and looked at Naruto fiercely. I don't care whether he can survive or not, as long as it delays my making money, it doesn't matter if they die, and you, a little brat, dare to hit me, then you can die too. Before, seeing that Kakashi and others were from Konoha, he didn't plan to kill them all, thinking of letting them go. After all, Konoha is also a big village, much larger than the Land of Waves. But now, he can't stand so much, turned his head and looked at the Ronin angrily. What are you looking at? Come on, kill all these ninjas. When the Ronin heard what Kato said, they all looked at Naruto, their eyes boiling with murderous intent. Kid, are you good? You dare to take the initiative to attack. You must be taught a lesson. You could have killed fewer people, but now you can't. Okay, stop talking, let's do it. One by one, without saying anything more, they drew their samurai swords and approached Naruto. Sakura saw Kakashi and the others behind Naruto and looked worried. Naruto, it's dangerous. Sasuke was ready to support him directly, but he was stopped by Kakashi just as he was about to move, and his eyes became a little confused. Kakashi shook his head and looked in Naruto's direction. Wait a minute, these Ronin are just ordinary people, Naruto can deal with them. And it's just right to test Naruto and see what will happen when facing actual combat alone. Naruto didn't see this in the last battle, so now, let's observe first. Teacher Kakashi, won't Naruto be in danger? Sakura next to him still looked a little worried. Even if there were ordinary people on the other side, there were more than a dozen of them. And Naruto looked unreliable, so she couldn't trust him in her heart. Kakashi nodded again. Don't worry, I'll take care of it, nothing will happen. Sakura didn't say anything more after hearing this, but the worry in her eyes did not disappear. At this time, Naruto looked at the Ronin approaching him, and his eyes became a little scared. When had he seen this scene before? More than a dozen people came towards him, each holding a knife to kill him. Even though he was a ninja, he couldn't help but feel scared. He looked back at Kakashi and others, and couldn't help but grin. If he could, he would want to curse. What's going on? They're all watching. And is Kakashi serious about the encouragement in his eyes? Is he going to deal with them alone? Little boy, don't look at them. Your friends must be scared. You go to die first. That's right, your friends will definitely come to accompany you later. The Ronin on the opposite side approached, smiling, and waved the samurai sword in his hand. Naruto didn't dare to look at anything more when he heard this voice. He gritted his teeth and his eyes became firm. I won't die like this. I want to be the Hokage. At the same time, he formed seals with both hands, multiple shadow clone technique. With a puff, countless figures suddenly appeared on the bridge. Seeing this scene, the Ronin and Kato on the opposite side were stunned, their eyes full of surprise. Kato covered his mouth and said with some fear, how is this possible, ninja? How can a ninja have such power? The Ronin also rubbed their eyes and said, that's right, this is impossible, ninjas can't be so powerful. This is fake, a little fake, it must be some kind of sleight of hand. Go, everyone, these are not real. But the next second, Naruto's shadow clones approached first and attacked the Ronin. I saw several shadow clones appeared in front of the opposite Ronin, raise their fists and hit them directly. With a bang, several attacked Ronin couldn't help but step back one after another. No, this is not fake, it's real, it's real. Ah, how is this possible? Why can ninjas be so powerful? Yes, isn't it said that ninjas are just slaves of the country? Why are they so powerful? Kakashi frowned as he heard these words. When did ninjas become slaves of the country? Hasn't the country always relied on the power of ninjas? I don't know how it got out, and there are actually people who believe it. I'm speechless. What Kakashi thinks, others don't know. Puff. Just then, a Ronin mustered up the courage to slash Naruto's shadow clone. The shadow clone suddenly turned into smoke and dissipated. Seeing this, the fear in the Ronin's eyes weakened a little, and he shouted to the Ronin around him, "This clone is not strong, everyone move, as long as you attack, these clones will disappear." When the Ronin heard this, they didn't care about being afraid, and they all waved their samurai swords. The next second, Naruto's shadow clones disappeared quickly. The fear on the faces of the Ronin also disappeared completely, and their eyes became murderous again. "Kid, you must die this time. I want you to see how powerful our samurai are. Go, kill these ninjas." After killing these shadow clones, the Ronin were full of confidence and quickly approached Naruto without hesitation. Naruto's brows also frowned tightly. Bulbasaur. He called Bulbasaur directly. It was not easy for him to deal with so many people, so he could only look for support. Dana. Bulbasaur, who was watching the show with Charmander and other elves in the back, heard Naruto's voice, answered speechlessly, and then quickly approached. This time, Kakashi did not stop anything. After all, he knew that with Naruto's current experience in fighting enemies, it would still be difficult to deal with the Ronin on the opposite side. Seeing Bulbasaur appear next to him, Naruto's eyes were full of fighting spirit. "Bulbasaur, use the Vine Whip." Dana. Bulbasaur nodded, and his eyes became serious. The stamens on its back, which had not yet fully opened, stretched out two vines quickly. At a very fast speed, it flew towards the Roninators on the opposite side. Seeing this, Kakashi and others were a little surprised. Kakashi frowned slightly and thought to himself, after this Bulbasaur evolved from Bulbasaur, the vines have obviously become larger, and it seems to have become much harder. Sasuke next to him also noticed this and couldn't help but say, "Is this the effect of the evolution of the elves?" As she said this, she looked at Charmander next to her with anticipation. With such a big change in Bulbasaur's skills, what kind of change will Charmander have? Even Sakura's eyes were a little hot when she looked at the little lucky egg. But she shook her head immediately. There was no way. She still remembered that the evolution of the little lucky egg required an evolution prop. Swoosh. The Ronin also saw the vines coming quickly. Their eyes were full of fear again, and they stepped back quickly. But compared with the vines of Bulbasaur, it was still much slower. Even before they could say anything, two of them were tied up by the vines. What is this? Is it a monster? No, I'm wrong. Don't kill me. I'm not delicious. It's a monster. It must be a monster. Ninjas are demons that drive monsters. The remaining Ronin who were not tied up looked terrified and stepped back. Cardo even sat down on the ground, his body shaking uncontrollably. His face was pale, as if he had seen a ghost. Naruto was speechless when he heard these words. These people are too ignorant, right? Have they really not understood anything about ninjas after growing up like this? Shaking his head, Naruto didn't think about it anymore, and ordered Bulbasaur again, "Bulbasaur, tie up these people." Dana. Bulbasaur nodded, looking at the Ronin with some anger. Just now, these people called monsters one by one, and it hurt it. No, everyone, resist quickly. As a great samurai, we can defeat even monsters. That's right, don't be afraid. As he said that, one of the Ronin walked out and walked towards the two people who were tied up. Waving the samurai sword, he chopped at the vines. However, after he chopped it down, he saw that the vine had not changed at all, and his arm couldn't help shaking, and he almost dropped the knife on the ground. It's fake at all. Muttering to himself, he raised the knife again and chopped it down fiercely, but the result was still the same. His hand felt a little painful, but the vine had not changed at all. The Ronin around him looked at each other, and they all became quiet, with despair on their faces. Some of the knives even fell to the ground, but there was no reaction on their faces. Dana. Bulbasaur used the vines again to tie up the Ronin. These Ronin obviously had no intention of resisting at this time, and they didn't even hide. Soon, everyone was tied up by Bulbasaur. Bulbasaur, you did a great job. Naruto smiled and gave a thumbs up. Da-na. Bulbasaur nodded and looked at Naruto proudly. It seemed to say, do you need to tell me? Naruto couldn't see Bulbasaur's expression, turned his head, and looked at Kakashi and others with a bit of arrogance. How about it, am I very powerful? Several people rolled their eyes silently, and they all looked down on it. Sakura. Isn't it because of Bulbasaur? Sasuke. Idiot. Kakashi. Naruto's mouth twitched, and his arrogance disappeared without a trace. But it didn't last long. He looked at Kakashi with some doubts. Teacher Kakashi, what should we do with these people? Kakashi didn't think about it and said coldly, kill them all. Kill them. Naruto was stunned and looked at Kakashi with some disbelief. Sakura was the same. She covered her mouth and stared with wide eyes. Even Sasuke's eyes trembled at this time, but he quickly recovered. Kakashi glanced at a few people and nodded. Yes, just kill them. Teacher Kakashi, this is not okay. Naruto was very confused. Although these people were a little too much, they couldn't let them die, right? Kakashi glared at Naruto. Naruto, what do you want? Let these people go. If this person is let go, they will definitely come back to retaliate against these workers. At that time, these workers will die because of you. Hearing this, Naruto bit his lip, clenched his fists, looked at the Ronin and Kato, and was very hesitant in his heart. Everyone fell silent after seeing this. Kakashi and Sasuke showed no expression, but Sakura looked worried. The relaxed expressions of people like Dazuna at the back became worried again. No, don't kill us, we are wrong, let us go, it's all Kato, it's Kato who wants to kill you. Yes, Kato, we will help you kill Kato. The Ronin also heard Kakashi's words and begged one by one. On Kato's side, the ground where he sat became wet, and he looked at him with fear, stammering and begging, I was wrong, I won't hurt them in the future, I can leave here, let me go. Naruto's eyes became more hesitant, his fists tightened and loosened, and he turned around and didn't dare to look. Then at this moment, Sakura shouted with worry in her eyes, Naruto, be careful. Sasuke took a step and rushed out quickly. Naruto heard Sakura's voice and saw Sasuke's actions, and turned his head to look back. As soon as he turned his head, he saw that Kato, who had just been sitting on the ground begging, had raised his samurai sword and appeared in front of him. He placed the sword across Naruto's neck and looked at Kakashi and others. Let me go, or I will kill him immediately, hurry up, let me go. Naruto couldn't react, and his mind seemed to be hit hard by a heavy hammer. Da-na. The eyes of Bulbasaur next to him also became a little angry. I didn't expect that, I didn't pay attention for a while, and now it has become like this. Hearing the voice of Bulbasaur, Kato's eyes became resentful, and he raised his foot and kicked it hard. He kicked Bulbasaur aside, and said viciously, it's you, the monster. If it weren't for you, these ninjas would have died. Bulbasaur was very angry, but he didn't dare to act. After all, Naruto was in danger at this time. Sakura and Sasuke, who had already stopped, were also very angry when they saw this scene, staring at Kato with gritted teeth. Kakashi's face didn't change, as if all this was just what he imagined. But this expression didn't last long. The next second, his frowning eyes became serious. I don't allow you to treat my partner like this, nor do I allow you to call it a monster. It's my partner. Naruto's angry voice came out, and orange chakra appeared outside his body. The pupils of his eyes changed, and his whole body was filled with negative emotions. Teacher Kakashi, this. Sakura turned her head and looked at Kakashi and asked stutteringly. Kakashi didn't answer, but a bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth under the mask, and he felt that his head had grown bigger. Sasuke, his pupils also dilated, frowning. Little devil, be quiet, I will kill you. Kato couldn't help but tremble, and continued to grit his teeth. For some reason, he suddenly felt a little scared, and the knife in his hand was almost unstable. Roar! Suddenly, Naruto roared, and a tail condensed behind him. Then Naruto grabbed the samurai sword and squeezed it hard. The next second, the samurai sword was directly flattened and the blade twisted. Kato looked at it with horror, trembling all over, and sat on the ground again, kicking his feet desperately, trying to distance himself from Naruto. But just at the beginning, he saw Naruto turned his head and looked at him with murderous intent. No, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. Roar. But Naruto didn't react at all, roared, and killed Cardo with one grab. Then he looked at the bound Ronin. Help, help, monster, monster. No, save me, puff. However, these words did not affect Naruto's killing at all. Under the attack of grabbing and grabbing, the Ronin completely lost their lives, and the blood covered the ground of the bridge. At this time, Naruto turned his head and looked at Kakashi and others. Looking at Naruto's eyes, Sakura, Sasuke and Dazuna and others behind him trembled inexplicably, and fear spread in their hearts. Sakura took a look and quickly retracted her gaze, looking at Kakashi next to her. Teacher Kakashi, what's wrong with Naruto? Hearing this, Sasuke also looked at Kakashi curiously. He was also very curious about what Naruto was like at this time. After all, Naruto's strength in this state has increased too much. Kakashi still didn't answer, and shouted to Naruto, Naruto, wake up. Roar. Naruto looked at Kakashi, roared, and then rushed over quickly. Kakashi shook his head, then approached Naruto, grabbed his arm, threw him to the ground with his back, locked his feet tightly, and then knocked him out with a knife. After all, he was an elite Jonin, so it was easy to deal with Naruto, who was unconscious in the state of one tail. Looking at the slowly disappearing orange chakra, Kakashi breathed a sigh of relief, let go of Naruto, and stood up. The people around him breathed a sigh of relief when they saw Kakashi's actions, and then their mouths twitched. Even the Bulbasaur next to him was stunned at this time, and some of them couldn't react. This guy seemed to have hit its owner, but it didn't seem to be wrong. Chapter 71. Boss, this is it, the elf my son has captured. At the elf house, old Feng looked at Feng Tian with satisfaction and said with a smile on his face. Okay, old Feng, your son is good. Looking at the baby bear that Feng Tian released on the ground, Shu Liang nodded and smiled. Although the baby bear was not too good, it was much better than old Feng's little Rada. Ha ha ha, old Feng's face was full of pride, and he smiled and patted Feng Tian on the shoulder. Of course, this is my son. Feng Tian felt a little embarrassed, and his tall figure looked a little awkward. Shu Liang also shook his head speechlessly, and then his eyes became serious. Old Feng, didn't you let others know about your elves? The smile on old Feng's face disappeared, and he sighed and nodded. Yes, I dare not let others know. Shu Liang frowned, his eyes full of doubts. Don't dare. Old nodded again. Yes, in fact, when I first got the elves, I thought about not telling others and cultivating them secretly. But after 2 days of contact with little Rada, I didn't think so. I found that it was not only us who needed elves, but the elves also needed us. At that time, I planned to introduce the elves to everyone so that more elves could appear, but... Speaking of this, old Feng sighed again and shook his head slightly. But what? Shu Liang almost couldn't help but want to curse. This is the true teachings of those TV dramas, the card is so suitable. But just when I had this plan, 2 masked ninjas found me. At this point, Lao Feng did not speak again. Shu Liang also roughly knew what was going on, and then frowned again. He was very confused. Could it be Danzo? But just when he had this idea, he was a little uncertain. According to Danzo's style of doing things, he should not be so gentle. What about Sarutobi Hiruzen? Then he denied it again. The probability of Sarutobi Hiruzen doing this was not high. The last conversation between the two of them was obviously a condition. As long as he didn't make any big trouble, Sarutobi Hiruzen would not do this. After all, this would offend him, and Sarutobi Hiruzen couldn't even figure this out. But whose people are they? The masked people who appeared in Konoha, in addition to Sarutobi Hiruzen's Anbu, were Danzo's roots. Although both of them had motives for doing this, they didn't seem like it. Shaking his head, Shu Liang didn't think about it anymore and continued to look at Lao Feng. Lao Feng, if I can help you solve those ninjas, can you help me promote the elves among ordinary people? Boss Shu, are you serious? Lao Feng was a little puzzled. Shu Liang nodded. Really, the elves here are not specially provided for ninjas, ordinary people are also eligible to obtain them. When Lao Feng heard this, his eyes became a little admiring. But then he hesitated. But, those ninjas will not agree. If it is 1 or 2, Konoha can still accept it, but if everyone, or most people can subdue the elves, then Konoha obviously can't agree. Identity is a matter, and the ninja will take fewer tasks in the future. This directly leads to the income of ninjas. How can it be so easy to agree? Those big families are okay, they all have their own family businesses. But this is only a part of the ninjas, and a large part of them earn money by tasks. Shu Liang also knew this, but he still nodded. I will deal with those ninjas. Even if he was against these ninjas, he had to do it. With Dragonite and Gardevoir now, he could keep himself safe in the early stage of the plot. But if it comes to the later stage of the plot, when these people start to hang up, he can't just rely on Dragonite and Gardevoir. In the later stage, there are so many super shadows, and there are several 6-path level ones. Relying on Dragonite and Gardevoir is a lot worse. So he must try to let more ordinary people get elves so as to quickly improve his points. Relying on the points provided by these ninjas now, he can't collect the points for items such as Mega Evolution Stone and Z Crystal Stone in the later stage of the plot. Although the exclusive treasure chest can open the mythical beast in these items, the probability is too small. A gold treasure chest requires 9 plot characters to capture elves. As for the higher level platinum, it requires 27 plot characters. And this is not necessarily possible. This makes how could he be so confident? So even for the sake of safety, he should first let the elves popularize insurance for ordinary people. On Lao Feng's side, looking at Shu Liang's appearance at this time, his face was still a little hesitant and his eyes were a little worried. Although Shu Liang said so, he also believed that Shu Liang could do it. But he was still very worried in his heart. After all, those ninjas were looking for him. Shu Liang knew what Lao Feng would think, and patted his shoulder. Don't worry, I won't let those ninjas cause you trouble. Lao Feng still didn't answer. This was related to his own life safety. He really didn't dare to gamble. But at this time, Feng Tian next to him said, Boss, leave it to me, I will help you introduce the elves to everyone. Hearing this, Shu Liang and Lao Feng looked over with some surprise. Seeing Feng Tian's serious and determined eyes, old Feng got a little angry and slapped him. I'll give you anything, don't you want to live? Then he looked at Shu Liang embarrassedly. Boss Shu, he was joking, don't take it seriously. Dad, I'm not joking, I'm serious. Feng Yu looked at old Feng, without any fear in his eyes. Old Feng was a little shocked and didn't know what to say for a while. This was the first time he saw this side of his son. But then he said angrily, why are you serious? Do you know how dangerous this is? Those ninjas are not as good as you think. Feng Yu did not dodge, his eyes staring at old Feng's eyes burning with anger. I know, but I'm not afraid. You're not afraid? Well, if you're not afraid, I'll make you not afraid. As he said, old Feng raised his hand and prepared to slap him. But just when he was about to hit, Lao Feng stopped, sighed, and looked at Shu Liang. Boss Shu, will those ninjas really not cause trouble? Shu Liang nodded. I'm sure. Lao Feng gritted his teeth. Okay, I agree. Hearing this, Shu Liang smiled. Lao Feng, thank you. Lao Feng waved his hand. It's okay, as long as you guarantee our safety. After saying that, he looked at Feng Tian again and cursed. What are you looking at? Go back. Standing at the door, watching the two people leave, Shu Liang was relieved. He was really afraid that Lao Feng would not agree. After all, it was dangerous. Shu Liang, why do you have to let them go? Can't you go by yourself? At this time, Sharona, who had been listening next to him, approached with a puzzled look. Shu Liang's words just now clearly showed that he was not afraid of ninjas or anything. In this way, couldn't he promote the elves by himself? Why did Lao Feng and others have to take such risks? Shu Liang listened to this and shook his head. It's not that simple. This elf is really not something I can promote. He had thought about this and even tried it before. In the past period of time, Shu Liang would bring Gardevoir with him when he went out on the street, just to see if there was a chance for ordinary people in Konoha to capture the elves. When ordinary people saw the elves for the first time, they were normal and interested in them. But when he went there later, he found that those ordinary people had no interest in the elves at all. They just looked at him with envy and didn't even dare to get close. At that time, Shu Liang also understood what was going on and asked a few ordinary people. The result was that the elves were the partners of the ninjas and the power to protect Konoha. Only powerful and recognized ninjas could gain the recognition of the elves. After hearing these words, Shu Liang immediately gave up on popularizing the elves. The meaning of this sentence is already very clear. It is completely saying that the elves are very powerful. Even those powerful ninjas find it difficult to subdue them, so ordinary people like you should not have wild ideas. After understanding the meaning of this sentence, it would be strange for those ordinary people to dare to take the elves. Even ninjas may not be able to subdue elves, let alone ordinary people. However, it must be said here that Sarutobi Hiruzen and Danzo are really amazing. With just one sentence, ordinary people dare not learn more about elves. And it also made Shu Liang unable to find trouble and could only suffer secretly. Otherwise, what else can he do? Come to the door, let Sarutobi Hiruzen and Danzo give an explanation. If this is the case, Sarutobi Hiruzen and Danzo can just find a scapegoat to solve the problem. This is why Shu Liang could only think of asking Lao Feng to promote it, because only ordinary people, and ordinary people like Lao Feng who are known by many people, can do it. Because if there is no reason to do it, he really has no chance to do it. Well, it's none of my business anyway. Sharona curled her lips and said nothing more. Shu Liang sighed and said nothing more. At the same time, on the other side, Lao Feng and Feng Tian, father and son, walked on the streets of Konoha with their elves. Feng Tian was fine, and there was no expression on his face, but Lao Feng's eyes were a little scared, and he looked around timidly. He regretted in his heart why he agreed to Shu Liang's request to popularize elves. Hey, Lao Feng, I was wondering why I didn't see you this afternoon. It turns out that you took Feng Tian out. Just then, a middle-aged man carrying a bag looked at Lao Feng and approached to say hello. When Lao Feng heard the voice, he was startled at first, then he breathed a sigh of relief after seeing who was coming, and said with a resentful look in his eyes, "Ha, Lao Wang, you scared me to death, you were so startled in broad daylight." Lao Wang on the opposite side heard this and looked a little puzzled. Lao Feng, are you doing something wrong? Go away. Lao Feng's face darkened. You are the one who is doing something wrong, am I Lao Feng such a person? Lao Wang looked at it carefully and nodded. Indeed, although you Lao Feng have a black heart, you have never done anything wrong. Lao Feng's mouth twitched, and he wanted to hit Lao Wang in his heart, and by the way, thank you so much. Just then, Lao Wang saw the little Rada and the baby bear next to Lao Feng and Feng Tian. Lao Feng, you are raising pets. But why a mouse and a bear? Lao Feng heard this, the corners of his mouth were a little bitter, and he didn't dare to say anything more, and directly changed the subject. Let's not talk about this, by the way, Lao Wang, what are you doing? But just after Lao Feng finished speaking, Feng Tian next to him said, Uncle Wang, this is the elf of me and my father, and it is also our family. Quote. As soon as these words came out, Lao Feng and Lao Wang both looked at Feng Tian. Lao Feng wanted to die, and he just said it directly. Can't you discuss it with me first? I am your father, what good will it do you to scare me to death? There are some confusions in my heart in plain words, isn't this son very timid? What the hell is called timid? If you take out this courage, you can squeeze a bucket of juice, right? On Lao Wang's side, his eyes were a little doubtful at this time, and he looked as if he was confirming whether he had heard it wrong. Uncle Wang, you heard it right, it's an elf, the kind of elf whose strength can be compared with that of a ninja. Feng Tian ignored Lao Feng, and after seeing Lao Wang's doubts, he emphasized again. Lao Wang came back to his senses and looked at Lao Feng, elf. Hey, Lao Feng sighed and nodded. Yes, elf. Lao Wang, the elf that has been circulating these days. Lao Feng, that's it. Is it really an elf? Lao Wang shouted, and the whole person approached Lao Feng, looking at him in surprise. Lao Feng was startled, and then his expression was a little flustered. However, Feng Tian did not wait for Lao Feng to answer, and nodded again to confirm, Uncle Wang, it is the elves. My father and I have obtained the elves. What? Lao Feng obtained the elves, is it true or not? Isn't it said that only ninjas can obtain elves? Yes, this is not something that people like us can obtain, is it false? It doesn't seem like it. Lao Feng will lie, but Feng Tian will never lie. Under Lao Wang's shouting, people around gathered around and started a heated discussion. Lao Feng in the crowd was in a state of panic when he heard these discussions. He looked at Lao Wang with a look of resentment. It's enough to know, but he still shouted, as if he was afraid that others didn't know. Now he can't help but promote it, which pushed him to the edge of the cliff. Hey, after sighing again, Lao Feng made up his mind. Okay, be quiet and listen to me first. The people around who were originally chattering shut up after hearing this and looked at Lao Feng. There was curiosity and expectation in their eyes. Lao Feng, this is indeed an elf, and it is also the elf that has been circulating in the past few days. This afternoon I took Feng Tian out to subdue these elves. When the people around heard this, their pupils dilated, some were surprised, some did not trust, some were suspicious, and some were disdainful. Old Feng, are you sure you are not lying? Those Anbu ninjas all said that only ninjas can subdue powerful elves, and ninjas may not be able to subdue them. That's right, Old Feng, don't joke, this is not funny. I say, you don't really believe it, do you? You can tell from one look that what Old Feng said is false. How can we subdue elves? How can powerful elves be willing to be subdued by us? Yes, we can't subdue them. When Old Feng heard these words, he was so angry that he blew his beard and glared. He told the truth, but no one believed it. He couldn't help but say to everyone, okay, you don't believe it, right? Come with me, I'll show you if this is an elf. After that, he pulled Feng Tian and turned to walk in one direction. When the people around saw Old Feng's appearance, their faces became a little confused again. Then they all followed him. After walking for a while, the group came to a small forest. Old Feng looked back at everyone and said, look carefully, see if it is an elf. After saying that, he looked at the little Rattata next to him and said, little Rattata, bite the tree in front. In the past few days, little Rattata has reached level 11 under his training. His strength can be compared with those genin. It is because of this that he took his son to conquer the elves. Because these elves are really, as Shu Liang said, they grow fast and have great potential. Hu la da, little Rattata nodded after hearing what Old Feng said, and looked at the tree in front. Then he moved his forelegs quickly, rushed out in the blink of an eye, and appeared in front of the tree. Then he saw little Rattata jump high, open his mouth, and bite the tree trunk. Click. The next second, as little Rattata bit, the tree made a cracking sound. There was an obvious pit at the place where he was bitten. The shape of the little Ratta's teeth and emotions were imprinted on it. Seeing this scene, the crowd who came to watch the excitement opened their mouths wide and looked at it in disbelief. Old Feng, this is true. You actually subdued the elves. Old Wang in the crowd was the first to react, staring with wide eyes and stammering. Old Feng nodded and rolled his eyes. I have always said yes, but you don't believe it yourself. I was somewhat speechless in my heart. I had to do this to believe it. I forgot that I didn't believe it when I first saw the elves, and it was only after Shu Liang's demonstration that I believed it. But when everyone heard Old Feng's voice, they all reacted. Old Feng, how did you subdue this elf? Is there any way we can subdue elves? Yes, Old Feng, tell me quickly, I will treat you to a meal, tell us how to subdue elves. I will treat you too, Old Feng, tell me quickly. Yes, your son, this bear, is also an elf, you must have a way, tell me. Old Feng was secretly happy when he heard what these people said. This feeling was really comfortable. Okay, stop arguing, let's make it clear first, you all have to treat me to a meal, otherwise I won't tell you. Everyone agreed to Old Feng without thinking, what's the big deal about a meal? If you can subdue such a powerful elf, then you can have as many as you want. When Old Feng saw this, his face became serious. In fact, what you think is fake, ordinary people can subdue elves, not just ninjas. Swish. Just then, a gust of wind suddenly appeared. 4 masked ninjas appeared in the woods, staring at Lao Feng with murderous eyes. At this time, one of the 4 came out. Feng Tang and Feng Tian, please go with us. Lao Feng frowned, his eyes became a little scared. Why, I didn't break the law, why should I go with you? Feng Tian couldn't help but say, yes, just because we told everyone the truth, can ordinary elves get it and arrest us? The eyes of the ninja on the opposite side changed, and the man in front waved his hand. We now suspect that you are foreign spies, and we have the right to kill you on the spot. As he said, the murderous intent in his eyes rolled over. Lao Feng and Feng Tian couldn't help trembling, and the whole person felt like entering winter, full of coldness. The ninja on the opposite side didn't care about these, waved his hand, do it. Lao Feng looked at the actions of the opposite side, and wanted to curse in his heart. Shu Liang did he say he would help them deal with the ninja? Where are the people? Why haven't they appeared yet? If they don't show up, he and his son will die here. The ninja on the opposite side has even taken out the kunai. The people around him retreated quickly when they saw this, and their eyes were full of fear. But at the same time, they were also puzzled, not understanding what was going on. What about Lao Feng as a spy? How could they believe it? They have known each other for so long, can't they see it? Kulada. Woo. But at this time, Rattata and Baby Bear felt the murderous intent, blocked Lao Feng and Feng Tian, and looked at the ninja on the opposite side vigilantly. Lao Feng and Feng Tian were a little moved when they saw this, but then they were very worried. The ninja on the opposite side looked not simple, and it was not something that two elves could deal with. The ninja on the opposite side frowned tightly when he saw this. At this time, the ninja in front spoke again. Don't hurt the elves, just get rid of the target. The other three nodded, and then quickly rushed towards Lao Feng and Feng Tian. Lao Feng was expressionless at this time, and he regretted in his heart why he agreed to Shu Liang's request. Even Feng Tian felt a little bitter at this moment. The people who retreated around him closed their eyes silently, afraid of what they would see next. Kulada. Woo. Little Rattata and Baby Bear, seeing the approaching ninja, did not give up, roared and rushed out. For them, protecting their masters is a principle, even if they will pay with their lives for it. In a blink of an eye, the distance between the ninja and the two elves was shortened. Looking at the attack of the two elves, several ninjas did not choose to pay attention, and quickly bypassed and went to Lao Feng and Feng Tian. Kulada. Woo. The two elves saw this scene, their faces were very angry and self-blaming. Running frantically, trying to stop the ninjas. But the gap was too big. Several ninjas had already appeared in front of the two, but they were still a long way away. Lao Feng and Feng Tian looked at the kunai getting closer and closer, feeling helpless. Swish. However, at this moment, a slender figure wearing a blue skirt appeared in front of the two, and with a wave of her arm, she easily resisted the attacks of several ninjas. An angry voice rang in everyone's heart. Unforgivable, you actually want to destroy Xiaoliang's business. The voice rang in everyone's heart, and everyone couldn't help but look over curiously. In front of Lao Feng and Feng Tian, a slender figure appeared on the empty ground. The figure glared at the ninjas in front of him, and transparent but visible energy flowed in his hands. Lao Feng and Feng Tian breathed a sigh of relief when they saw this scene, and they couldn't control their bodies and sat down on the ground. They gasped heavily. Just now, they really thought they were going to die here. The kunai was only a few meters away from the two of them. According to the speed of the ninjas, they would be finished in the next second. Fortunately, Gardevoir appeared to stop it. The expressions of the ninjas on the opposite side also changed suddenly. Unlike Lao Feng and Feng Tian, their eyes became solemn. Looking at Gardevoir, who easily resisted the attack by raising his hand and could still speak, they widened their eyes in surprise and looked a little scared. But he didn't dare to think too much. The ninja in the front looked at Gardevoir with an ugly face and said, "Do you really want to be our enemy?" HMPH. Gardevoir snorted coldly, waved his arm and knocked several ninjas away, and said coldly, "We should ask this question. Xiaoliang said that if he doesn't give an explanation, he will definitely go to your route." It was difficult for Shu Liang to find a reason to take action based on the rumors before, but now, the reason has come. As a result, these rude ninjas actually said such words. Even Gardevoir felt very angry at this time. The rude ninjas who flew out slowly stood up from the ground, looking at Gardevoir with some disbelief. Although they knew that they were not opponents, they didn't expect the gap to be so big. The four of them are all senior ninjas. How could they accept the sudden appearance and easy knocking away? However, several people also knew that this was not the time to think about these things. The captain in the crowd stood up again. "Sir, it's our fault. We leave now. I will also tell Danzo what you said. There is no way. With Gardevoir here, they will definitely not be able to complete the task of killing Lao Feng and Feng Tian, so they can only leave here first." After saying that, he took the lead and turned around to leave. But at this moment, an invisible wall suddenly appeared, blocking the departure of several people. Then Gardevoir's voice came. "I can't let you leave. You'd better wait first. Let's talk about it when Xiaoliang comes." "Sir, the ninja wanted to say something, but before he finished speaking, he felt a huge pressure on his body. He fell to the ground with a bang and couldn't even speak. "Humph," Gardevoir snorted again. "Let's talk about it when Xiaoliang comes." Seeing this scene, the mouths of the people around him opened wide, and their eyes were full of admiration. Even Lao Feng and Feng Tian couldn't believe it. Those ninjas were so powerful that they couldn't even see their movements, but Gardevoir suppressed them so easily. Wait a minute, suddenly, Lao Feng reacted, his eyes widened. Did you speak just now? Before escaping death, he was only grateful, and didn't think about anything else, but now he reacted, his eyes were full of shock. Elves can actually speak, this is something he had never thought about before. Gardevoir looked back at Lao Feng, rolled his eyes and ignored it. Lao Feng was not embarrassed, he turned his head and looked at Feng Tian. Son, did she speak just now? Feng Tian nodded, but didn't answer, and looked at Gardevoir with yearning. The powerful force deeply shocked him. Pulata. Woo. At this time, Rattata and Baby Bear approached Gardevoir pitifully. As he spoke, he pointed at several ninjas who were pressed to the ground by his mental power. Gardevoir smiled when he saw this and touched the heads of the two elves. Okay, Xiaoliang, come over later, we will help you get revenge. The two elves nodded when they heard this, and their pitiful expressions quickly disappeared. Swish, bang. The next second, a sound of breaking wind sounded, and then something fell to the ground, making a sound, and the ground felt a vibration, and dust rose from the ground. Ahem, Dragonite, can't you be a little gentler? I would have come with Gardevoir if I had known. Ah, as the conversation spread, the dust slowly dissipated, and Shu Liang and Dragonite inside appeared in front of everyone. Xiaoliang, you're here. Boss Shu, you're here after all. Hu la da. Woo. Shu Liang, who had just finished coughing, looked over when he heard the sound. He saw Shinado nodded and said hello, while little Rattata and Baby Bear rushed directly towards him. And Lao Feng was crying and looking at him, as if he had suffered a great injustice. Ahem, Shu Liang caught the two elves that rushed over, and coughed awkwardly. Lao Feng, isn't this just right? He didn't expect that Lao Feng had just come out of his place not long ago, and he was targeted by the ninjas of the route. He almost didn't react. Lao Feng looked at Shu Liang speechlessly, and then didn't say anything more. Ah, I know. At this moment, in the crowd next to him, Lao Wang's eyes suddenly lit up, looking at Shu Liang and said, this is the person who introduced the elves to us a few days ago. Quote. Yes, I have an impression of it, and I seem to have learned about it at that time. That's right, the one next to him is the elf he brought with him before. I remember it too, and I didn't believe it at that time. How could it be an elf that looks so much like a human? As Lao Wang's voice sounded, the people around him reacted one by one. Shu Liang also heard these voices, turned his head and nodded with a smile, and then looked at the ninjas suppressed by Gardevoir. You guys, you are going too far. The eyes were full of anger, and the voice became a little cold. After hearing Shu Liang's words, Gardevoir withdrew its mental power, allowing the root ninjas to regain the ability to speak. Ahem, the ninja on the opposite side, after feeling the suppression power dissipate, stood up and coughed twice, looking at Shu Liang with a very serious look. Boss Shu, I should say you are going too far, you should know the purpose of our doing this. Quote. He was also very angry in his heart. As a ninja, he certainly knew what consequences the popularization of elves would bring to ordinary people. Hee, Shu Liang sneered. Why, are you only allowed to subdue elves? The ninja on the opposite side was silent for a moment after hearing this, and then continued. Boss Shu, if you do this, you will be in opposition to the ninjas, not just our Konoha, you have to think about this clearly. Boring. Shu Liang's eyes turned cold, and a mental force gathered. I saw that the right arms of several ninjas on the opposite side began to twist. Then with a hissing sound, the whole arm fell off. Ah! Several people screamed in pain, looking at Shu Liang with fear on their faces. They never thought that Shu Liang would be so decisive and directly pinch off one of their arms. Shu Liang didn't care what the ninja on the opposite side thought. His mental power spread around, and he shouted coldly, Danzo, you'd better get out of here, otherwise I will go to the route to find you myself. The voice, accompanied by mental power, spread around Konoha. Konoha, Hokage Building. Sarutobi Hiruzen, who was smoking in the office while looking at the crystal ball, suddenly changed his face when he heard the voice, and stood up with a frown. Swish. The next second, an Anbu ninja appeared in front of the desk and knelt on one knee. Hokage-sama. Sarutobi Hiruzen waved his hand. That voice just now was Shu Liang's, right? The Anbu ninja nodded. Yes, Hokage-sama, Shu Liang and Danzo-sama's men are fighting. Sarutobi Hiruzen heard this, and his face changed again, and his figure disappeared in the Hokage's office. Hearing that Danzo and Shu Liang were fighting, he immediately understood, otherwise he wouldn't be so anxious. At the same time, on the other side, in a dim room, Danzo also heard the voice, and his eyes showed murderous intent. It has been a long time since I was threatened. This is the first time I have heard such words since the sacrifice of the second-generation Hokage. Danzo-sama. At this time, a root ninja appeared here and spoke to Danzo anxiously. No need, I know. Danzo waved his hand and interrupted the root ninja. At this time, even if you can guess what the situation is. The root ninja nodded, and then continued, Danzo-sama, shall we go over? Danzo pondered for a while, then nodded, of course we have to go over. If we don't go over, then this play can't go on. After that, Danzo showed an evil smile at the corner of his mouth. I secretly thought in my heart, Hiruzen, you can't do it this time, right? The root ninja also saw Danzo's smile, and he was inexplicably afraid in his heart, and quickly lowered his head. Danzo. Okay, gather our people, let's go over and show our faces. Not only Sarutobi Hiruzen and Danzo heard Shu Liang's voice, but also ordinary people and ninjas on the streets of Konoha. Teams like Yuhi Kurenai, Might Guy, and Asuma who had been to Shu Liang did not go on the mission. After hearing this voice, everyone's eyes became a little worried, and they quickly moved towards the direction of the voice. Shu Liang said so, and called Danzo by name, so something must be going to happen. Not only a few teams, but many ninjas in Konoha rushed towards Shu Liang's direction after hearing this voice. At this time, at the destination where everyone was rushing, Shu Liang calmly looked at Lao Feng, Feng Tian, and the people around him. Okay, you all leave here quickly. After all, there might be a fight later, and he didn't want these ordinary people to get into trouble because of him. After all, it was indeed the same as what the ninjas on the ground said, his behavior was against all ninjas. Lao Feng and Feng Tian nodded when they heard this, and the people around them also nodded and left here. After all, after watching for so long, they more or less knew what it meant, and they also knew that the situation that would happen next was not something that ordinary people like them could deal with. As everyone left, the ninja who had spoken before stood up, holding his arm, and looked at Shu Liang with trembling eyes. You lunatic, do you know that this will plunge Konoha into war? Shu Liang nodded. I know, but so what? The popularization of elves is necessary, and it is also necessary for ordinary people to obtain them. The situation he will face next is also what he must face, it is just a matter of time. If he succeeds, then the era of elves has come. If he fails, no, Shu Liang does not think he will fail. The root ninja did not say anything more immediately, he even felt that all this was Shu Liang's fault, well planned. If Shu Liang knew what he was thinking, he would nod. This was indeed what he had planned. It was to start the reform that he had to complete this time. Swish. The next second, there were voices coming from all around. Shu Liang looked and saw ninjas appearing in the small woods. Some of these ninjas were from family backgrounds, while others were from civilian backgrounds. They appeared around one by one, looking at Shu Liang with puzzled eyes. Boss. At this moment, Might Guy, wearing a green tights, appeared in front of Shu Liang. He looked at the root ninja on the ground and asked in confusion, Boss, what's going on? Yes, Boss Shu, I want to know too. With a swish, Yuhi Kurenai appeared in front of him holding the ice Vulpix, and said in confusion. Before Shu Liang could speak, Asuma also appeared in front of him, frowning and looking at him. Shu Liang saw several people nodded. You are here too, it's really lively. Nothing happened, it's just that Danzo stopped me from entrusting the elves to ordinary people, just to teach them a lesson. When the three heard this, they were stunned for a moment and frowned slightly. Might Guy spoke first. Isn't it good for ordinary people to subdue elves? Why does Danzo want to stop it? For him, ordinary people can also have power, that's great, Konoha will become stronger, even stronger than ever. No, Asuma frowned and shook his head, he will indeed stop it. Unlike Might Guy, he is not so optimistic and knows that Konoha is not as simple as it seems. The same goes for Yuhi Kurenai. She also understands these things and looks at Shu Liang with some worry. Boss Shu, have you really decided? Shu Liang smiled and nodded. I have decided. No matter what, I must do this. No, wait a minute. Might Guy rubbed his head and looked at the others blankly. What are you talking about? Why can't I understand? And why would Danzo do this? The corners of the mouths of the others couldn't help twitching twice, and they looked at Might Guy speechlessly. But just when they were about to explain to Might Guy, a voice came over. Hokage-sama. The shouts of the crowd made the people who were about to explain to Might Guy look back. Sarutobi Hiruzen appeared in the forest, nodded to the surrounding ninjas, and walked towards Shu Liang. Hokage-sama. Might Guy and the other two shouted when they saw Sarutobi Hiruzen approaching. You are here too, it seems that this matter is quite a big deal. Looking at the several root ninjas next to him, he sighed and Sarutobi Hiruzen looked at Shu Liang. Boss Shu, I wonder what your plan is. Shu Liang smiled again. Third generation, what else can I plan, isn't it already planned? It has come to this point, what else can I plan? Sarutobi Hiruzen's eyes became serious. Do we have to let ordinary people capture elves? Shu Liang nodded without hesitation. Yes, I must do this. You should know the consequences of doing this. Shu Liang smiled indifferently. I know, but I still have to do this. Sarutobi Hiruzen heard this, his eyes were a little sharp, then even if we are enemies of our entire Konoha. Ow! Before Shu Liang had time to speak, the Dragonite behind him stood up and roared at Sarutobi Hiruzen. Gardevoir was the same, its mental power spread out directly, staring, as if it was going to attack in the next second. Asuma and Yuhi saw this scene, they suddenly felt a headache. Might Guy was a little stunned when he saw this, even at this time, he still didn't understand what was going on. At this time, Shu Liang patted Dragonite and looked at Gardevoir. Okay, hold back for now, the third Hokage was just joking. Dragonite and Gardevoir restrained their breath after hearing this, but their eyes were still fixed on Sarutobi Hiruzen. Shu Liang didn't say anything more after seeing this, and looked at Sarutobi Hiruzen. Third generation, even so, I still want ordinary people to have the right to obtain spirits. Sarutobi Hiruzen first glanced at Gardevoir, his eyes were a little shocked. He felt a momentum that was not much weaker than his on Gardevoir, which gave him a headache. If it was only Dragonite, he would dare to bet with Shu Liang, but now with Gardevoir, he didn't dare to bet. Ah! With a sigh, Sarutobi Hiruzen also restrained his momentum and smiled bitterly. Boss Shu, you should know that ninjas will not agree to ordinary people gaining power. What? Before Shu Liang answered, Might Guy next to him couldn't help but said in surprise, Hokage-sama, why would the ninja disagree? Isn't it good for ordinary people to gain spirits? It can make Konoha stronger. Sarutobi Hiruzen was stunned for a moment, looked at Might Guy, and couldn't help twitching at the corners of his mouth. I was thinking in my heart, who the hell are you? You actually came out to ruin my stage at this time. Thank you so much. Asuma and Yuhi Kurenai both felt a little embarrassed, and they both wanted to cover their faces and turn their heads away. On the other hand, Shu Liang smiled and looked at Sarutobi Hiruzen, as if to say, you brag, you keep bragging. Ahem. Sarutobi Hiruzen saw Shu Liang's eyes, coughed awkwardly twice, and then continued seriously, most ninjas will not agree to this. Shu Liang nodded. I know that some ninjas will definitely not accept it, but I can't stop ordinary people from conquering elves because of these ninjas. Sarutobi Hiruzen frowned. Is there no way to change it? Shu Liang shook his head. It can't be changed, I can't let only ninjas conquer elves. Looking at the decisive Shu Liang, Sarutobi Hiruzen's face turned ugly. In his heart, he didn't want ordinary people to obtain elves, otherwise the previous words would not have spread. Of course, I can also take a step back and let those ninjas try to accept it. After all, you can't force it too much, otherwise it will really be a confrontation. Hearing this, Sarutobi Hiruzen looked over and said, how to change it? Shu Liang. Ninjas do not accept ordinary people gaining power, basically because of benefits. When ordinary people gain spirits, there will be fewer tasks. Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded. That's true, but how to change it? Shu Liang also started to explain and told his method. These directions can make up for the missing tasks. In the future, when more people have spirits, the benefits these ninjas will get will definitely be more than what they get when they do tasks, and there will be no danger. Asuma and the others couldn't help but nodded when they heard Shu Liang's words. But Sarutobi Hiruzen was a little skeptical. Are you sure it will be the same as you said? To be honest, even he was a little tempted. If it is really possible, it will definitely be much more profitable than doing tasks. Shu Liang felt a little disdainful when he heard this. Just looking at the business level of the Naruto world, you are still doubting it. After all, you are a modern person. Isn't your business knowledge much more advanced than now? Unless it is the era of Boruto, you are not even qualified to compare. Of course, I still have this confidence. As long as there is a little time, it is still very simple to make the income of these ninjas not lower than before. Even if he gives up a little use, he can do this. However, Sarutobi Hiruzen still frowned and looked at Shu Liang and said, Boss Shu, is this really okay? Many ninjas have reasons for status in addition to interests. It is not easy to become a ninja and have power beyond ordinary people. If ordinary people get spirits and power, they may not be able to accept it in their hearts. Shu Liang nodded. Of course. Sarutobi Hiruzen. What if they don't agree? Hearing this, Shu Liang understood the reason in his heart and looked at Sarutobi Hiruzen. Then it depends on you, the third generation. If you don't agree in the end, then I can't do anything. But I will still let ordinary people get the spirits. If someone stops me again, it won't be like today. You still don't agree, you have to agree. Giving you a solution is already very face-saving. Although there are ways to solve the identity problem, he will not choose to solve it. If he agrees, there may be some requirements later. And even if ordinary people get the spirits, it will not have much impact on this aspect. After all, there is still a gap. Although Shu Liang didn't want to fight, fighting would not benefit him, but he was not afraid. Sarutobi Hiruzen heard this, his expression froze, and he looked at Shu Liang with a frown. He didn't expect that Shu Liang would threaten directly. Boss Shu, is this really necessary? Facing Shu Liang's threat, Sarutobi Hiruzen did not get angry and said again. Shu Liang nodded heavily. Yes, third generation, I have said so, you should understand. Ah, Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed, fell into deep thought, and did not say much. But at this time, Might Guy next to him said, Hokage-sama, this is already very good. According to what the boss said, the utilization of ninjas will not be reduced, and it can also improve the overall strength of Konoha. He couldn't figure it out in his heart, isn't this very good? Even he felt very good when he heard it, why didn't he agree? Asuma and Yuhi Kurenai also nodded, they also felt good about what Shu Liang had just said. Although some ninjas would still not be happy to accept it in their hearts. But, everything is like this. There is gain and loss, as Shu Liang just said, the ninjas will gain more than they lose. For Konoha, the benefits outweigh the disadvantages. It is a good thing no matter how you look at it. Sarutobi Hiruzen looked at the appearance of several people and sighed silently in his heart again. How could he not know this? But he had his own worries. If ordinary people get spirits and have power, then there will definitely be a group of ambitious guys. This is not a good thing for Konoha. The most important point is that his position as Hokage may change. This is also the reason why he hesitated. When there is no power, it is acceptable to obey management, after all, you can't resist. But with power, this is not necessarily the case. Hiruzen, we can't agree. You should understand that if this is true, even we will be at risk. Just when Sarutobi Hiruzen was frowning, Danzo's voice came from the crowd around him. Hearing this voice, Shu Liang and others looked over, even Sarutobi Hiruzen who was in deep thought. I saw the ninjas watching next to them move aside to both sides and make way. Danzo came over with dozens of root ninjas. He first glanced at the several root ninjas with broken arms next to him, then frowned and looked at Shu Liang. Boss Shu, you want to be enemies with Konoha by hurting my root ninjas. The ninjas watching the show around him looked at Shu Liang when they heard this. Shu Liang smiled and looked at Danzo with cold eyes. When did you represent Konoha, Danzo? The third Hokage is still here. Even if you want to be the Hokage, it's not now. Sarutobi Hiruzen's face changed, and he glared at Danzo fiercely. Danzo, I'm not dead yet. Danzo was so angry that his eyes were full of murderous intent, and he wanted to kill Shu Liang right now. HMPH. Under Sarutobi Hiruzen's cold gaze, he snorted coldly, then you should explain it properly, right? Shu Liang laughed at the corner of his mouth. Danzo, are you pretending? Don't you know what's going on? Do you need me to remind you? You. Danzo's lips couldn't help but tremble with anger, and his face turned red as he pointed at Shu Liang. What do you mean by you? Do you really think you can't see what you're plotting? Shu Liang didn't even give Danzo a chance to speak, and said disdainfully. Sarutobi Hiruzen, who was standing next to him, frowned tightly when he heard this, and looked at Danzo again. Shu Liang said so, how could he still not understand? This Danzo wanted him to test Shu Liang. He was a little angry in his heart, and his eyes became colder. HMPH. Danzo also noticed Sarutobi Hiruzen's eyes, and snorted again, without saying anything more, but the murderous intent in his eyes became stronger. Shu Liang ignored this and looked at Sarutobi Hiruzen. Third generation, what do you think? Sarutobi Hiruzen frowned slightly, his face full of hesitation. He really didn't know how to decide at this time, and he didn't want to agree to this in his heart. But at the same time, he didn't want to have any conflicts with Shu Liang. Hiruzen, we can't agree. You should consider us. If ordinary people get Konoha, Konoha will be in chaos. Danzo looked at Sarutobi Hiruzen's hesitation, his heart tightened, and he was a little scared. Hearing this, Shu Liang's eyes became disdainful again. Will there be chaos? Isn't it just because you are afraid that there are too many people, and you guys can't control it, and you are afraid that you will be played with in the end? Then, Shu Liang also became a little angry, and looked at Danzo. Danzo, I am not discussing with you, I am just talking about my decision. Of course, I have no objection to your opposition to me, just make your plans. Quote. Ahem. Sarutobi Hiruzen coughed. Boss Shu, is there no possibility of change? No, Shu Liang said decisively. I want to scold you, and you are still pretending to ask at this point. Can't you be more decisive? It's okay to fight. Hey, okay. Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed and nodded. In fact, there is nothing wrong with ordinary people getting spirits. Hiruzen. The pattern's eyes widened, looking at Sarutobi Hiruzen felt incredible, and he didn't expect that he actually agreed. Sarutobi Hiruzen stared again. Danzo, don't forget that I am the Hokage. Quote. He was increasingly dissatisfied with Danzo in his heart, and he had not yet taken care of the plot against himself. And did he want to see such a situation? He had no choice. What could he do if Shu Liang was so strong? If they really fought, he would not be sure of winning. Danzo gritted his teeth, and suddenly thought of something. His expression became a little bitter, and he sighed with emotion. Hiruzen, if ordinary people gain the power to fight against ninjas, it would be a huge blow to us ninjas. Oh, forget it, it seems that God wants us ninjas to be lonely. In the future, ordinary people will have the strength of ninjas, so is there any need for us ninjas to exist? A few people beside him, Asuma, heard this and shouted in their hearts that it was not good. The mood that had just relaxed was raised again at this moment. Sarutobi Hiruzen's face became angry, and he became more and more disgusted with Danzo in his heart, and even had a hint of murderous intent. At this moment, the ninjas who had been watching but not speaking around became surprised. What? The ninjas are lonely, Lord Hokage, you can't do this. Quote. Yes, Lord Hokage, you can't make such a decision. Quote. Quote. Hearing these voices, Sarutobi Hiruzen had a headache. Originally, he was thinking about talking to these ninjas slowly later, but he didn't expect that Danzo would directly put this matter in the open, angering these ninjas. And at this moment, a cold voice came out. Danzo, I think you really want to die. Shu Liang's expression was cold and his eyes were murderous. Originally, the matter was going to end here. As long as Sarutobi Hiruzen brainwashed them, it would basically be done. The final result was a happy ending for everyone, and there was no need to fight. But when Danzo, the troublemaker, said this, the result was different. It was equivalent to directly overturning the previous discussion and starting all over again. After all, Sarutobi Hiruzen couldn't ignore the emotions of these ninjas, right? If he really ignored it, his reputation would be in trouble, and most ninjas would have opinions about him. Boss Shu, did I say something wrong? Danzo replied with a smile, not afraid of Shu Liang's words at all. Shu Liang looked at Danzo, then at the ninjas who were talking around him, and his expression became calm and said, Dragonite, Dragon Dive. Stop. Dragonite roared and flew quickly into the sky. At that speed, the people around him couldn't react. The discussions in their mouths stopped, and they looked at the Dragonite in the sky. Sarutobi Hiruzen and Yuhi Kurenai looked at it with some worry. Even Danzo was a little scared, and even wanted to escape from here directly. Hang on. At this moment, Dragonite in the sky roared again. Then, Wrapped in a ball of energy, it dived towards the ground. The speed was much faster than when it flew up. It was like a flash of lightning, and it fell to the ground in the next second. Rumble. A huge noise sounded, and everyone in Konoha turned their heads to look over, their eyes full of fear. Bang. It hasn't stopped yet, and with the huge noise, the surrounding ground began to tremble, and the amplitude became larger and larger. Then the ground quickly cracked, and the trees and land in the forest rolled and spread out to the surroundings. No, it's not good, everyone retreat quickly. Sarutobi Hiruzen saw this, his eyes suddenly condensed, and he said with a frown. Fortunately, there were no ordinary people here, and they all reacted quickly and left quickly. In this way, everyone ran for dozens of meters, and the rolling ground finally calmed down. However, everyone's mood was not calm at this time. Looking at the ground that collapsed for hundreds of meters, and the bloodshot eyes of Dragonite in the center of the ground, they couldn't help but shudder. They couldn't help but feel scared and terrified. Coupled with the murderous intent emitted by Dragonite at this time, everyone felt as if they were in hell. Even Sarutobi Hiruzen had this feeling at this time, with his hair standing on end and his back cold. If he had faced this attack just now, he would be half dead even if he was alive at this time. At the same time, he became more scared in his heart. The attack of Dragonite just now was completely beyond the level of Cage. Even if it was still a little distance from the Super Cage, it was not much different. This was much more powerful than he imagined. How could he not be afraid in his heart? If he had 30% confidence in the previous confrontation with Shu Liang, then now, he only had 10% confidence, the kind that was not much more than that. Bang! At this moment, Danzo in the crowd was suddenly hit in the face, and the whole person flew to the side and hit the ground hard, even making a hole in the ground. Danzo, if you do something else, it won't be as simple as a slap. Just when everyone was still shocked, Shu Liang and Gardevoir floating in the sky slowly approached. His face was calm, but he looked at Danzo in the crowd with a cold light. In his heart, he really wanted to be willful and kill Danzo directly. At worst, he would be completely hostile to Konoha. At this time, Danzo on the ground turned pale when he heard this, and clenched his fists tightly. He never thought that he would be slapped in the face in Konoha one day, and in front of so many people. But then, he relaxed his clenched fists. He also knew what Dragonite's attack just now meant, so he had to endure it even if he was slapped. In his heart, he suddenly understood why Sarutobi Hiruzen compromised. This is a must compromise, it's really impossible to beat him. Even if he has a trump card, he dare not say anything more at this time, and his eyes are a little evasive when he looks at Shu Liang. That attack really scared him, but he didn't have the courage to jump again. Humph! Shu Liang sneered in his heart after noticing Danzo's expression, and then snorted coldly, glancing at everyone. I am not trying to get your consent to popularize the elves, please remember this. Of course, I still say that you can stop it, but you have to weigh the consequences yourself. Danzo heard this and held his head. There is no way, he said it again. If he said that, I'm afraid Shu Liang would really dare to kill him directly. Sarutobi Hiruzen and Asuma, who knew about the elves, were relieved to see that Danzo didn't say anything more. I was really afraid that this troublemaker would say something at this time. However, those ninjas who didn't know about the elves looked confused and didn't understand what Shu Liang was talking about. Shu Liang also saw the expressions of these people, but he didn't want to explain anything. He put away his coldness and looked at Sarutobi Hiruzen. Third generation, the next step is up to you. I'll go back first. He had said what he should say and expressed what he should express. What happened next was Konoha's own business. He didn't care what happened in the end. So he didn't plan to stay any longer. He glanced at Danzo again coldly, snorted coldly, and fell towards Dragonite with Gardevoir. He remembered Danzo's calculation this time. A slap was not enough, and it was impossible for him to pass so easily. Nodding to Gardevoir, Gardevoir's mental power burst out, teleporting with Shu Liang and Dragonite away from here. The people around were surprised again when they saw this. Even Sarutobi Hiruzen, who was already very familiar with the elves, was the same. Even he didn't notice the departure of Shu Liang and the two elves. Dragonite was very fast just now, but he also noticed it, but now, it seemed to disappear in an instant. At this time, Asuma next to him seemed to see Sarutobi Hiruzen's doubts and explained. That should be teleportation, a skill of psychic elves, a bit like flying thunder god, but it does not need kunai as a connection, it only needs to rely on its own energy perception, how far it can perceive, how far it can move, and the speed will be faster than Flying Thunder God. During this period of time, I have trained elves with Shu Liang, and I have learned a lot of news. I have become friends with Sirona, and Ino even brings ice cream every time, and I have heard a lot of news that the others don't know. Just like teleportation now, I couldn't believe it when I first learned about it, after all, it was too amazing. I even had doubts in my heart, but I didn't expect it to actually happen now. When the people around heard this, their expressions became shocked again. Even Sarutobi Hiruzen and Danzo were the same. As long as you are a ninja, how could you not know Flying Thunder God? The fourth Hokage has become famous in the ninja world with this ninjutsu. But at this time, a space ninjutsu that is even more perverted than Flying Thunder God appeared. Sarutobi Hiruzen rubbed his head, and suddenly felt that his chances of winning were not even 10%. After all, even if he won, he might not be able to kill Shu Liang and others. With this skill, Shu Liang could run away if he couldn't win. He shook his head, sighed again, and didn't think about it anymore. He looked at Danzo with some anger. Danzo, you'd better give me an explanation this time. Danzo's eyes were gloomy, and he suppressed the murderous intent in his heart and nodded. I know, I will quit the Elders' Council. Hearing this, Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded. Okay, then you can have a good rest. He didn't force Danzo too much, and didn't remove his position as the leader of the route. After all, he knew in his heart that if this position was also removed, Danzo would definitely resist. And quitting the Elders' Council was equivalent to giving up the right to manage Konoha, which was also very good. Danzo glanced at Sarutobi Hiruzen, nodded, and turned around and left with his people. This time, I didn't achieve my goal, and ended up like this. How can I stay here? Sarutobi Hiruzen didn't care. He looked at the ninjas around him and started to introduce the elves. By the way, he also told everyone about the benefits that Shu Liang had mentioned before. Then he brainwashed everyone and they were excited. Hokage, I agree. It's nothing for ordinary people to get elves. Yes, and with elves, our safety has been greatly improved. That's right, we agree. Sarutobi Hiruzen saw this scene and nodded, sighing in his heart. I didn't expect that I would persuade these ninjas to agree in the end. I persuaded them, but I didn't agree in my heart. Of course, there were people who disagreed in the crowd, but they didn't dare to say much at this time. After all, they had seen the powerful power of Dragonite just now, so they had to agree even if they didn't agree. Since I couldn't refuse, I could only enjoy it silently. On the other hand, Might Guy and other people who have already obtained the elves couldn't help but smile. For them, interests and status don't matter, and they don't care about these. They must be very happy to see the elves spread in Konoha. Elf House. Sharona, who was originally observing the elf eggs, felt something, looked back, and saw Shu Liang and the two elves who suddenly appeared, and greeted, "Are you back?" Hearing this, Shu Liang also reacted from the surprise brought by the teleportation, and nodded, "Yes, I'm back. This is the first time to try teleportation, it is really a special feeling. It's like blinking an eye, and the next second I appeared in the elf house." I made up my mind silently in my heart that I must learn this skill quickly. Before, I have always been practicing mental power and training my own attack power, and I have never practiced in this aspect. How is it going well? Sharona asked with a curious expression. Shu Liang smiled confidently. Of course, who am I? How can it not go smoothly with me here? Sharona couldn't help rolling her eyes. I didn't know who it was before, and she said that her promotion would not be successful. Now you are so confident. Shu Liang's mouth twitched, and he regretted telling Sharona these things in his heart. And it was a bit unfair. Shouldn't he find a reason? It's impossible for him to explode directly. Threaten Konoha for no reason. This can't be like this, right? It looks like there is something wrong with his brain. There must be a reason first. If you promote yourself, Konoha will not give you this reason. Shaking his head, Shu Liang didn't say anything more. Forget it, I'd better go and draw more elves. There will definitely be a lot of people coming to get elves tomorrow, not only ordinary people, but also many ninjas. So you should be prepared first, otherwise it will be really embarrassing if a large group of people can't find elves tomorrow. Sharona looked at Shu Liang, who was leaving, and didn't say much, and continued to observe the Pokémon egg. Dragonite and Gardevoir also started to act. Dragonite returned to the backyard, came to the exercise equipment, and started to exercise. For him, nothing is more important than getting stronger. It is because of this willpower that the level has reached 90 at this time. Gardevoir poured a glass of water and walked towards Shu Liang's house. It usually trains for a period of time in the morning and evening, and the rest of the time in the room, either taking care of Shu Liang or helping to look after the store. It has become a steward of the elf house, and even the energy blocks of the elves in the back mountain are fed by it. In Shu Liang's room, he took the water handed over by Gardevoir, thanked him, and looked at the system panel. 230,000 points, I don't know if it will be enough tomorrow. Looking at the remaining points, Shu Liang frowned slightly. It seems that I can draw more than 200 elves, but it is still a lot less. You know, after such a commotion today, there will be a lot of people coming to capture elves tomorrow. Although ordinary people may be slower, there will not be many people coming tomorrow. But there will definitely be a lot of ninjas tomorrow, even if they are just ninjas. I don't know if these elves are enough. But after a while, there should be no shortage of points. Shu Liang muttered to himself. With more people, the increase in points will not be as slow as it is now. From the beginning to now, this elf house has been open for almost half a month. But the points actually gained from those who captured elves were only about 200,000 points. If most of them were not plot characters, I'm afraid that number would not even be reached now. Forget it, don't think about it, start drawing. System, just give me 200 consecutive draws. After all, I still have to save some points to buy elf balls, so I definitely can't draw all of them. Okay host, the draw begins. The system answered, and then the draw page appeared and started to rotate. Get Rattata, Caterpillar, Unicorn, Abersnake, Pangolin, Nidoran. A series of voices sounded in Shu Liang's ears, and his brows were tightly furrowed. System, is the probability of drawing a quasi-god and the three great elves so low? The names of the elves in his mind sounded more than 10 times, but they were all those common elves. But the system didn't have time to pay attention to Shu Liang at this time. He couldn't even win by reporting the names, so how could he have time to pay attention to him? In this way, time passed quickly bit by bit, and the names of the elves appeared one by one. Suddenly, 2 names flashed by, and Shu Liang's eyes lit up. Baby Dragon and Single-Headed Dragon. As the system's voice stopped, Shu Liang muttered to himself. Isn't this probability a bit low? 200 draws have been made, but only 2 quasi-gods have appeared. The host's luck is already very good. The probability of entrusting the elves to draw is already very low. Shu Liang suddenly didn't want to talk. He drew 2 quasi-gods, and he was lucky. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. If he was unlucky, wouldn't he be able to draw even 1 quasi-god? Shaking his head, Shu Liang didn't care too much, and continued to look at the elves he had just drawn in his mind. After all, he reported 200 names at once, and even if Shu Liang was serious, he couldn't remember them all. After taking a look, Shu Liang nodded, and secretly said in his heart, if you don't just look at the quasi-gods, the elves I drew this time are really good. Shu Liang saw several of the 3 major families, and even the burning bugs and fangs appeared. Although they are not quasi-gods, they are also super rare elves. Of course, there are still very few such elves, and basically only one was drawn. Most of them are very common elves with low racial values. For example, green caterpillars and unicorns, basically several or even dozens of them appeared. Host, please find a good place to receive elves. At this time, the system voice came again. Hearing this voice, Shu Liang didn't observe anything more, and got up and walked towards the back mountain. Xiaoliang, do you want to go out? The Gardevoir next to him saw Shu Liang standing up and asked in confusion. Shu Liang nodded. Yes, Gardevoir should go with you. After speaking, he walked out of the room. After walking out, I saw Sharona eating ice cream and looking at the elf eggs. Shu Liang also pulled her to the back mountain. After all, there will be 200 elves coming later, so it is better to have 2 more people. Shu Liang, isn't it just summoning elves? Why are you pulling me? On the way to the back mountain, Sharona licked the ice cream and said speechlessly. I can't figure it out. Summoning only a few or a dozen elves, is it necessary to call her and Gardevoir? Shu Liang, on his side, heard Sharona's words and glared at her. Just follow me, otherwise I won't give you ice cream in the future. Sharona stopped talking and followed her obediently. Not eating ice cream is simply torture for her. Even if she doesn't eat, she can't not eat ice cream. Shu Liang shook his head, and he didn't understand Sharona more and more. She looks like a noble princess, but why is her personality and hobbies so much like a child? However, after Sharona stopped complaining, the speed of the two people and the elf increased a little. Not long after, they arrived at the halfway point of the back mountain. When they got here, Shu Liang stopped. Okay, let's go here. Sharona and Gardevoir didn't say anything, but looked at Shu Liang. Shu Liang, on his side, communicated with the system. System, this is it, summon the elves. When there are more than 10 elves, the system will not summon directly, but will ask the host. If Shu Liang didn't know this, he would not dare to draw directly in his room. 200 elves, even if he squeezed his room to pieces, he couldn't fit half of them. As Shu Liang said, elves appeared out of thin air around him. They were a little confused at first, and then they approached with smiles after seeing Shu Liang. Sharona and Gardevoir were not surprised, after all, they had seen this scene before. However, as time passed, Sharona and Gardevoir looked surprised and looked at Shu Liang at the same time. There were hundreds of elves appearing at this time, and they were still appearing one by one. Summoning so many at once must be surprising. The most Shu Liang summoned before was no more than 20. Why are you looking at me? Didn't I say that there will be a lot of people coming tomorrow? Shu Liang also noticed the look of the people and elves and explained. Sharona, are there so many people? There are almost 150 elves, right? Shu Liang rolled his eyes. This is just the beginning, I'm afraid it's not enough. In his heart, he didn't know what Sharona was surprised about. There were thousands of ninjas in Konoha, and there were only 200 elves. He didn't know how far he was from his goal. And it's not just ninjas, there are ordinary people. This is just the first batch, and there will definitely be a lot of summons of this level in the future. Sharona didn't know what to say. She simply stopped talking and watched quietly. Gardevoir didn't ask anything and just watched quietly. In this way, soon the number of elves stopped increasing. Shu Liang looked at the elves surrounding him and suddenly felt a headache. Although the elves were cute, their calls were not noisy. But that was only a few times. Now 200 of them were calling together. Even if they thought they were cute before, they felt a little bit unbearable now. Okay, everyone be quiet and listen to me first. Rubbing his temple, Shu Liang shouted loudly. The elves around him also quieted down and looked at Shu Liang curiously. Relieved, Shu Liang began to explain the rules to these new elves. Sharona and Gardevoir next to him also breathed a sigh of relief when they saw this. They couldn't stand the noisy scene just now. Okay, that's all. This mountain is my territory. You can find an environment you like to live in. Finally, when it's time to eat, remember to go in this direction. There is an arrow cabin there. Just gather outside Konoha. As Shu Liang finished speaking, the elves around nodded and answered with a chirping sound. Seeing this scene, Shu Liang didn't say anything more. He waved his hand. Okay, now you can move around on your own. If you need help, just go to the cabin to find us. The elves nodded again, and then left here one by one and began to look for their own place to live. Shu Liang, who watched this scene, breathed a sigh of relief again. He was still very stressed to summon so many elves at once. Shu Liang, did you call me here just to take a look? Sharona looked at the elves who left, and her eyes became resentful. Wouldn't it be better to eat ice cream and study the elf eggs at this time? Shu Liang, who was in front of him, turned around and rolled his eyes when he heard this. Who said I asked you to come here just to take a look? You and Gardevoir, help me watch these elves, don't cause any trouble. With so many elves, conflicts will arise, just like people, or even more serious. If he doesn't watch them first, he is really afraid that these elves will fight. On the other side, Sharona's mouth twitched, and her eyes became more resentful. But there was no other way, so she left here with Gardevoir and began to observe the elves who had just left. Please like my videos and subscribe for more videos.